is hereby called to order. Let us all observe a minute of silent prayer. Amen. The AUP Little Singers will lead us in the singing of the Philippine National Anthem, and then they will also render a song entitled Unang Alay. Secretary, please call the roll. Thank you. Salamat.
The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Dilimad, Drilon,
Salamat.
Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Hunasan, Monteveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soveri, Senate President Pimentel.
Escudero, present. With 20 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 69th session, Wednesday, March 14, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we consider the reference of business at a later hour.
Any objection? Hearing none, we will consider the reference of business later.
Thank you. Mr. President, I would like to acknowledge presence in the plenary of some guests. We have the officials of Santo Tomas, Batangas, Mayor Edna P. Sanchez, Vice Mayor Arminio Silva, the Sangguniang Bayan members, Barangay Chairman, the department heads, Barangay Nutrition Scholars of Mandaluyong also are here, St. Anthony School students of Humanities and Social Science, also the barangay officials of Lorenzo Tangub City, Misamis Occidental, and UP Los Baños College of Human Ecology, also farmer leaders together with former Senator Bobby Tañada are with us, Mr. President.
Welcome to all of our guests.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the acting majority leader, Mr. President, Senator Honasan.
Senator Honasan as acting majority leader.
Mr. President, I move for consideration for third reading SB 1233 under Committee Report Number 8.
So colleagues, are we ready for third reading? Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, may we request the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act creating the Coconut Farmers and Industry Trust Fund, providing for the management and utilization and for other purposes.
Mr. President, printed copies of the measure were distributed last March 15, 2018, thereby complying with the 3-day rule. I therefore move to vote on third and final reading, Senate Bill number 1233, through a roll call vote.
Any objection? Okay, hearing none, we will now proceed with the roll call vote.
The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Hontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soberi, Senate President Pimentel.
With 19 affirmative votes, 1 negative vote, Senate Bill number 1233 is approved on third reading. Senator Pangilinan.
Mr. President, may I be allowed to explain my vote?
Yes, sir. This is the...
Mr. President, I voted in favor of this measure on third reading. Mr. President, and may I be allowed to explain my vote? On November 9, 2016, the Committee on Agriculture and Food, which I then chaired, came out with the original Senate Bill 1233, the proposed Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Act, which was crafted with the active participation of farmers' organizations and their representatives from whom levies were extracted for their supposed benefit. The same farmers who have fought for about 40 years, Mr. President, in the courts, in the streets, and now in the Legislative Hall to get justice. The same farmers, organizations, and their representatives for whom I am lending my one voice and my one vote here in the Senate. Senate Bill 1233 was formulated with 3 major objectives in mind. 1, to create the mechanism for the mandates prescribed by different Supreme Court decisions on the disposition of some of the cocoa levy assets. 2, to conform to governmental procedures on management and utilization of the available cocoa levy funds. And 3, to realize the aspirations of the coconut farmers on how the cocoa levy funds can be managed, invested, allocated, and utilized. With these in mind, Senate Bill 1233 proposed the establishment of a trust fund that is separate from the funds of the national government and dedicated for the benefit of the coconut farmers and the development of the coconut industry, as ruled by the Supreme Court. The trust fund was designed specifically to be an off-budget source of funds for programs and projects identified in the Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Plan, which would necessarily be prepared by the coconut farmers themselves, with the ultimate objective of raising their productivity and increasing their incomes. To manage, invest, and allocate the utilization of the trust fund, a trust committee was proposed to be created, composed of 5 government agencies and 6 farmers' representatives, 2 for each island grouping of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The trust committee was also envisioned to manage the non-cash coconut levy assets, which includes property in Paris and is estimated to be worth about 30 billion pesos, and to determine whether to retain or privatize, based on the needs of the coconut farmers, these assets. The trust committee was supposed to be distinct and separate from the Philippine Coconut Authority, as we also recognize the challenges facing the capacity and capability of the PCA organization in achieving these concerns. More than a year after we submitted Senate Bill 1233, we are now faced with an amended version that we believe is far from what we expected. We had hoped that only minor changes would be imposed on our version, but unfortunately the wish of the majority in the Senate, expressed and formalized through a vote, has to be respected. As proposed in amendment and amended last Monday, Senate Bill 1233 will have a trust fund that is not separate from the general fund. It is a fund that is now similar or the same to that of a special account in the general fund, where monies or funds from the trust fund to be used for the ensuing year will have to be included in the National Expenditure Program and appropriated through the General Appropriations Act. The negative consequence of such a process is that, which I continue to hope would not happen, the funds will be appropriated for programs and projects that may not be identified in the Coconut Farmers and Industry Plan. Mr. President, sad to say, such prescription in Senate Bill 1233 removes the essence of a trust fund. This, I believe, veers away from the Supreme Court rulings on the COCO levy funds. Secondly, instead of a trust committee, the PCA board was reconstituted to reflect almost fully the proposed membership of the trust committee. This removes the creation of a new but small bureaucracy and absorbs the idea of having more farmers representatives in the PCA board. For us, the creation of a trust committee and its small secretariat is a minor issue, as we place greater importance in recognizing the multifaceted nature of improving the lives of our coconut farmers and in promoting productivity and encouraging business enterprises for the coconut industry. As I have observed when I was Presidential Assistant for Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization, and likewise ventilated by our coconut farmers, the PCA lacks or does not have the full capacity to plan and implement multivariate programs and projects affecting the lives of our coconut farmers. Despite all these, Mr. President, I am still confident and hopeful that this august chamber and its representatives, as a Senate panel to the bicameral conference on the Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Bills, will see and appreciate the aspiration of our coconut farmers, as well as their decades-long struggle, and the mandates of the Supreme Court rulings, and come out with a true trust fund that is special in nature and outside the appropriation process. Mr. President, and to my colleagues, thank you for giving the time and improving this bill, so that at the soonest possible time, funds can be made available to uplift the conditions of our coconut farmers, the poorest of our farmers, and immediately rehabilitate and development the coconut industry. With these sentiments, Mr. President, I vote yes with reservations, hopeful that the bicameral conference committee will see the wisdom of the original Senate Bill 1233. Thank you.
Senator Ontiveros. Mr. President, I move to recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros. Senator Ontiveros.
Salamat po, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to register my no vote to Senate Bill 1233 for the following reasons. Ang esensya ng Coco Levy Fund ay ang kaunlaran ng industriya ng niyugan para sa ating mga magnunyog. Ito ay isang special fund. Ang Supreme Court na mismo ang nagsabi na ito ay held in trust para sa ating mga magnunyog. Hindi ito bahagi ng general fund. Ipinanalo ng magnunyog ang nararapat na para sa kanila, ngunit ang Senado pa mismo ang muling bumawi nito. Ang pinakapuso ng Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Act ay ang Trust Fund Committee. Ang panukalang ito ay galing mismo sa mga organisasyon ng mga magnunyog sa Pilipinas upang mapamahalaan ang pondong ito ng isang komite kung saan mas maraming magnunyog ang nakaupo. Ito sana magdedemokratisa ng industriya ng pagnunyog. Nilalayo nito na bigyan ng boses ang maliliit na magnunyog na magpahanggang ngayon ay ang pinakamahihirap sa ating bansa at patuloy na inaabuso ng mga malalaking industry players. Ang panukalang ito ay resulta ng napakaraming konsultasyon sa mga lokal at nasyonal na assemblea ng mga coconut farmers. Nagkaroon pa ng 1,750 kilometrong marcha mula Davao hanggang Manila noong 2014 kasabay ng mga konsultasyong ito. Pero binaliwala lang natin ito. While our coconut farmers welcomed the idea of reconstituting the Philippine Coconut Authority for more farmer representation in its governing board, that could do more harm than good. First, the PCA charter remains the same, a charter that would still include palm oil industry development, and insofar as coconut is concerned, limited only to coconut oil production. Second, the PCA is a government-owned and controlled corporation whose primary function is to generate revenue and not the development of the coconut industry for the benefit of the coconut farmers. Third, the PCA has regulatory and other functions that will overburden the institution from fulfilling its function of administering the trust fund. And fourth, the PCA was part of the Coco Levy scam itself. Ang Coco Levy scam ay isang Marcos atrocity na naglugmok at patuloy na nagpapahirap sa ating mga magnunyog. Hindi sila nakinabang sa pondong ito at bagkus ay nagpayaman pa ito sa mga asendero at mga crony ni Marcos. Ang Coco Levy Act na sana ang magtatama sa historical injustice na dinanas ng ating mga magnunyog. Sa pag-iit ng Senado, sa paraan ng pamamahala sa pondong ito at pagbaliwala sa panukala mismo ng magnunyog, Mr. President, my dear colleagues, muli lang natin silang ninakawan. I vote no.
Mr. President, I move to recognize the Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator Recto.
Senator Recto is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I vote yes to this bill because the fund will remain a trust to be invested safely, administered simply by a body dominated by coconut farmers, matched with bigger government funds, and spent in a manner pursuant to a menu that will benefit the many coconut farmers as quickly as possible. First, the levies will remain a public trust, but will be transparent. So it will not suffer the fate of typical off-budget accounts like the lamentable Road Users Tax Fund and the lost Malampaya collections. Its usage, reporting, and expenditure will strictly follow budget, accounting, procurement, and auditing rules. The trust income can only be spent in obedience to the industry roadmap and must be line itemized in the PCA budget. It will never be considered new appropriations, which means that while it can be subject to scrutiny, it cannot be spent for other purposes. Second, the original proposal was for a coconut industry development fund that will only use interest income from the Coco Levy Trust. This will amount to 2 billion to 2.5 billion a year. Pero bakit Coco Levy lang ang gagamitin? Bakit hindi magbigay ng counterpart fund ang pamahalaan? Thus, the Senate version adds a guaranteed budgetary support of 10 billion to the PCA on top of trust income. Third, this bill jettisons the idea of a perpetual rehabilitation of an industry in crisis. Instead, it mandates a 25-year timetable for good reason. If the patient is in ICU and the coconut industry is, then the treatment must be immediate and the assistance massive. Kung namamatay na sa uhaw, bakit isang kutsarita lang ang ibibigay? Through a drip-drip of funds. When World War II ended and Pinatubo erupted, the government vowed quick and not forever rehabilitation. Ang gusto ba natin sa Marawi at Yolanda, reconstruction, wala ring katapusan? Palagay ko hindi. Fourth, the trust will be invested in the safest instrument there is, the Republic-backed government securities. Fancy derivatives will have no place in fund stewardship, nor will subprime products. Fifth, the original proposal called for a creation of a 13-person trust committee, separate from the PCA, plus a multi-agency ad hoc committee that will draft the coconut industry roadmap. Why create so many bureaucratic layers and overlaps when it can be done by an expanded and strengthened PCA dominated by coconut farmers who will occupy 6 out of the 11 seats? Kung isa lang ang paglalaggakan ng pera at wala ng investment picks, bakit pabubuo ng hiwalay at napakalaking grupo ng mga ngasiwa? If the spending is pursuant to a farmer's drafted roadmap, then why create a bigger and separate oversight committee? We can embrace the orthodoxy of the more the merrier oversight, or opt for a practical compact body whose membership does not go against the interests which must be represented. There is no government agency today that is by law dominated by private individuals. The proposed expanded PCA breaks tradition by reserving majority of its seat for coconut farmers. The PCA will be the lead initiator of the coconut industry roadmap, in which all stakeholders will participate. It will be empowered with the right to ratify the stewardship or disposal of cocoa levy assets. Thus, why maintain two bodies when, for purposes of efficiency, transparency, accountability, and savings, it can be done by one body, the PCA, that is dominated by coconut farmers? Mr. President, I maintain there is no debate as to the need that the levies must now be enjoyed by the people who paid for it. The divergence is on how to plow it back. I vote yes to this bill because it mandates a system that will lead to the efficient use of public money. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move for consideration for third reading of Senate Bill number 1738 under Committee Report number 277.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, may we request the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
An act establishing the Philippine Identification System.
Mr. President, printed copies of the measure were distributed last March 15, 2018, thereby complying with the 3-day rule. I therefore move to vote on third and final reading, Senate Bill number 1738, through a roll call vote.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved. The Secretary will now conduct the roll call vote.
The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, De Rilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Hunasan, Monteveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soberi, Senate President Pimentel.
With 19 affirmative votes, 0 negative votes, Senate Bill number 1738 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move to recognize the Senate President Pro Tempore, Senator.
May I know, Mr. President, how my vote was counted?
Affirmative.
Mr. President, I vote no. So
Only?
therefore, may we...
Okay, we will correct. Only one. Who else? Senator Ontiveros, what is the...
Mr. President, and with the indulgence of the good sponsor whom I consulted earlier, I should have raised this point that I would like to make of record last Monday during the period of interpellation and then in the period of amendments. Nga lang, Mr. President, nagkaroon ng medical emergency at kinailangan kong mag-absent, tumakbo sa emergency room para sa isang anak ko. I would have wanted, Mr. President, to raise in the period of interpellation and then in the period of amendments, which I was updated later that evening na hindi na po ipinagpatuloy dahil ang naging kasunduan ay yung mga amyenda ay ipapasok na lamang sa bicameral conference. Additional safeguards, Mr. President, to the proposed Philippine Identification System Act. Lalong-lalo na po, Mr. President, dun sa letter B ng section allowing the state to access a person's private information. Bagamat in-update po ako ng good sponsor na meron ng letter C na disclosures of persons' private information be carried out upon the order of a competent court, pero meron pong naunang letter B na when the compelling interest of public health or safety so requires. Kaya po sana, Mr. President, kung present lang ako nung Lunes at na-erase ko ito sa period of interpellation, ay dahil po, sino po yung magtatakda na kailan ang compelling interest of public health, kailan compelling interest of public safety na nangangailangan nitong pag-access ng impormasyon ng isang mamamayan sa ilalim ng Philippine Identification System. At kung present po ako nung Lunes at kung nagpatuloy po yung period of amendments, Mr. President, ay dapat sana panukala ako ng ganitong proposed amendment na pagsasamahin ang sections B at C para madagdagan pa ng safeguards yung usapin ng civil liberties sa Philippine Identification System. Kamakailan ko lamang po na ipakita sa good sponsor yung ganito pong proposed language ng amyenda sana na inihain ko noong Lunes. Letter B, when the compelling interest of public health or safety so requires, comma, upon the order of any competent court, comma, relevant information may be disclosed, comma, provided that the risk of significant harm to the public is established and the owner of the information is notified within 72 hours of the fact of such disclosure. Sa ganyang sanang paraan, Mr. President, kung hindi ako kinailangan dahil sa isang medical emergency noong Lunes na for the first time sa higit 1.5 taon ma-absent dito po sa ating session, ay mas mabibigyan ng safeguard itong pagtakda ng compelling interest of public health or safety sa pamamagitan nung isa pang section na nandoon na sa bill, yung all disclosures of persons' private information be carried out solely upon the order of a competent court. Nung in-update po ako, Mr. President, sa parliamentary status ng bill, sinabi nga na yung amyenda ay ipapasok na lamang sa bicameral conference. Kaya naglalaban po talaga yung kalooban ko, Mr. President, at inamin ko po ito sa good sponsor. Dahil kung sa proseso lamang na hindi ako nakadalo sa period of interpellation at hindi po tayo nagkaroon ng period of amendments, ay mapipilitan akong bumoto ng no sa panukala. Ito po yung nais ko pong hingian ng guidance sa inyo, Mr. President, at sa good sponsor. Dahil kung hindi ko po ma-reconcile sa sarili ko, ay lalo na dun sa usapin ng proseso, yung hindi ko nalahukan, ay mapipilitan din po akong bumoto ng no, Mr. President.
Senator Lacson.
Mr. President, I was just informed by the principal sponsor of this bill, counterpart bill in the House, that definitely there will be a bicameral conference. And yes, we will seriously consider and even fight for the supposed amendment of the good distinguished colleague from Panay Island. As a matter of fact, I'm inviting her to be a member of the bicameral conference committee of the Senate panel, Mr. President.
Which we will name in due time.
Yes, Mr. President. Having said that, and if this is the proper time, may I manifest that the following be made?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
President.
So I think we need to clarify now from Senator Ontiveros what is her vote, so I can announce properly the result of the vote.
So, Mr. President, on the condition that I graciously accept the assurance of the good sponsor that I will be made a member of the Senate contingent to the bicameral conference, and with the assurance of the Senate President that indeed I will be made a member at the proper time upon the motion of the good sponsor, precisely to fight for this amendment to the bill at this point in time, and which would be my only reason to vote for the bill to vote for the bicameral version, to include that section that when the compelling interest of public health or safety so requires, upon the order of any competent court, relevant information may be disclosed, provided that the risk of significant harm to the public is established and the owner of the information is notified within 72 hours of the fact of such disclosure. On those conditions, Mr. President, I vote in the affirmative. Thank you, Mr. President, and
Okay,
thank
so
you to the good sponsor.
Let Senator Lacson. Okay.
I would just like to manifest that I cannot assure her membership because it's subject to the approval of the minority leader. But if she is recommended to be a member of the Senate panel, then we'll gladly accept, Mr. President.
May I?
Yes. Again, Senator Ontiveros, what else?
Thank you, Mr. President. In that case po, dahil kahit pa mabuti yung dahilan ko ng pag-absent nung Lunes bilang magulang ng isang anak, dahil hindi ko nagawa yung dapat ko sanang nagawa, na nag-interpolate sa puntong ito ng dagdag na safeguard sa usapin ng when the public safety and public health so require, na idugtong po doon yung usapin ng upon the order of a competent court with full confidence in the good faith of the good sponsor who has never failed me sa mga usapan namin sa mga usaping legislatura. Still, given that we are talking about this moment and not a future moment that I may possibly be made a member of the Bicameral Conference Committee, ipagkakatiwala ko na lamang po yung proposed amendment ko sa good sponsor at sa ating minority leader na isa ring author. And may I correct my earlier manifestation, Mr. President, on this vote, I vote no to the bill on the Philippine identification system. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Anybody else who feels that his or her vote was not counted correctly? Dun muna tayo, not yet in the explanation of vote. Okay, so now I will now announce the correct result. 17, no? With 17 affirmative votes, 2 negative votes, Senate Bill number 1738 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move to recognize Senator Recto.
Senator Recto is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, allow me to congratulate the main sponsors, Senators Ping and Frank, for writing the specs of a national ID card, which is so valuable and virtuous that people won't be leaving home without it. As I register my affirmative vote, let me reiterate the points that I raised in my sponsorship speech and during my interpellation of the kind sponsor.
This law will have a price tag of 25 billion spread over 5 years. The cost will come up to 220 pesos per individual based on a 2022 population of 114 million. While cardholders will get their number and card for free, they will, however, indirectly pay for it as taxpayers. So I expect the Senate, true to its tradition of rigorously scrutinizing the budget, will be unsparing in demanding what the 25 billion could deliver. I have to stress this, Mr. President, because while this bill mandates the establishment of an ID system, it does not grant the executive a blank check to implement. That will still be authorized by congressional appropriations. But I do hope, however, that part of the outlay will be used to assist data capture points run by local government units, because for most of the population, these are offices nearest to them. I think that for 25 billion, it would not be too much to expect that what will be given to us is an ID system which will be safe, secure, and will serve as a substitute for the accordion of government cards that we carry in our wallets. The data collected and maintained should be protected as a national treasure, guarded at all times against the threats from within and without, because an enemy with malware is as dangerous as one with a missile. I'm also comforted, Mr. President, by the assurance made by the good sponsors that during the registration phase and even after, the failure to present the national ID will never be ground for the denial or forfeiture of government services. I vote yes, Mr. President.
Who else? Senator Pangilinan.
Mr. President, I will just submit a written explanation of my vote so that it may be placed on record.
Senator Villanueva.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I vote yes. Magbubukas ng oportunidad sa bawat Filipino ang panukalang Philippine Identification System. Let's take the case of a job seeker or a fresh graduate who goes through the burden of securing multifarious documents just to apply for a job. At present, he or she needs to get a police and NBI clearance, barangay clearance, birth certificate, marriage certificate, tax identification number. The list goes on and on, depending on the nature of employment. Mr. President, if we have a real unified ID system, the process of job application will never be that cumbersome for first-time job seekers, especially millennials who want to accomplish things in a swift manner. Hindi po ba't sayang talaga ang oras sa pagkuha ng sari-saring dokumento, sa pagtenga sa pila, sa pagpapalik-balik sa iba't iba at magkakalayong mga ahensya ng ating gobyerno? Hindi po ba't mas madali kung yung halos 14 na iba't ibang ID o dokumento na hawak ng mga Pilipino ngayon ay mapagsama balang araw sa isang national ID card? Mr. President, the national ID system can make social inclusion possible by providing official identification to Filipinos, most especially indigenous peoples, who usually have no access to documents required for employment, financial or banking services, and education and training. Naalala ko po, Mr. President, doon po sa TESDA, nanawagan po tayo noon sa mga mall operators na maglagay ng specialista desk sa loob ng kanilang mga malls. Tumugon po dito ang Robinsons Land Corporation. At ang nangyari po noon, 2014, natatandaan ko, 19 na Robinsons Mall sa iba't ibang lugar sa Pilipinas nagkaroon ng TESDA specialista desk, a one-stop shop on TechVoc and TESDA's programs and services. Ganito po ang imahe sa isip ko ng panukalang National ID System. Kumpleto, mabilis, at di kalidad na serbisyo sa ating mga kababayan. Noon pa, pangarap na po natin na sana, balang araw, kapag may isang Pilipinong lumapit sa anumang ahensya ng gobyerno, magpapakita lang siya ng isang ID, mapagkakaaloban na siya ng serbisyo. Mr. President, we believe that a good national ID system will result to a better delivery of and access to government services because it can reduce cost both to the government and to the Filipino citizens. Kaya't suportado po natin ang Senate Bill number 1738, lalo na't isa po ang Pilipinas sa natitirang 9 na bansa sa buong mundo na wala pang national ID system. Sa tingin ko po, may kaugnayan po ito sa sitwasyon natin ngayon sa halos 8 milyong Pilipino na walang birth certificate, Mr. President. Kung wala man lang pong birth registration ang 8 milyong kababayan natin, paano po sila makakapasok sa trabaho, makakakuha ng serbisyo ng ating pamahalaan. However, Mr. President, we don't want indiscriminate data collection, and we believe that the data to be collected by the Philippine Registry for the National ID shall be limited to demographic information like name, sex, date, and place of birth, and biometrics information like facial image and fingerprints. These data and information are adequate to help facilitate jobs and services to our people. Again, Mr. President, we support the funding of the national ID system amounting 2 billion pesos, which I believe has already been made available in the General Appropriations Act under the budget of the Philippine Statistics Authority. We take this opportunity to thank our good friend and mentor, Senator Ping Lacson, for sponsoring this measure, and rest assured that we will support the passage of the Senate Bill 1738 because we believe that it can open up more opportunities to all Filipinos. Thank you, Mr. President, and may God bless us all.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move for consideration for third reading of House Bill 5160 under the Committee Report number 221.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, may we request the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
Secretary, please do so.
An act converting the municipality of Santo Tomas in the province of Batangas into a component city to be known as the City of Santo Tomas.
Mr. President, printed copies of the measure were distributed last March 15, 2018, thereby complying with the 3-day rule. I therefore move to vote on third and final reading, House Bill 5160, through a roll call vote.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, we will now proceed to the roll call vote.
The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Honasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Soberi, Senate President Pimentel.
With 19 affirmative votes, 0 negative vote, House Bill number 5160 is approved on third reading. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, we are in receipt of a copy of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1461 and House Bill number 7054. This is an act institutionalizing the Electric Cooperatives Emergency and Resiliency Fund and appropriating funds therefore. With the permission of the body, may we recognize the chairman of the Senate panel, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, to give us highlights of the BICAM report.
Can we request for silence, please? Order. Senator Gatchalian is now recognized to give us the highlights of the Conference Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate panel of the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1461 and House Bill number 7054, an act institutionalizing the Electric Cooperatives Emergency and Resiliency Fund and appropriating funds therefore. I have the honor to report to the body the bicameral report on the reconciled bill. Mr. President, your Bicameral Conference Committee has come up with a reconciled version of the bill that will create a culture of resiliency in our electric cooperatives and will be responsive to their needs in the aftermath of natural disasters. Instead of reading the joint explanatory statement of the bicameral report, may I be allowed to present the highlights of the reconciled bill and the joint explanation to be inserted and to be considered read into the records. First, the reconciled bill requires all electric cooperatives to submit to the National Electrification Administration the respective vulnerability and risk assessment, resiliency compliance plans, and emergency response plans every year as a requirement to access the Electric Cooperatives Emergency and Resiliency Fund. Second, the reconciled bill appropriates 750 million pesos for the initial implementation of the act, which shall be taken from the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund. The amount shall be immediately released to the National Electrification Administration Quick Response Fund for proper release to qualified electric cooperatives subject to the allocation of the fund as specified in the Act. Thereafter, such amounts necessary for the sustainable implementation of the Electric Cooperatives Emergency and Resiliency Fund shall be included in the General Appropriations Act. Third, the allocation of the fund shall be exclusively for the restoration and rehabilitation of the electric cooperatives' damaged infrastructure after a fortuitous or force majeure, provided that the amount shall not be used for the conversion of the calamity loan into a grant. Fourth and last, the reconciled bill provides that donations in the form of funds, materials, or equipment, whether local or international, intended for the express purpose of restoring or rehabilitating the electric cooperatives' infrastructure damaged by a fortuitous event or force majeure shall be received directly by the National Electrification Administration, subject to existing auditing rules and regulation, and shall be exempt from all duties, fees, taxes, and other charges. With that, Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the bicameral conference report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1461 and House Bill number 7054. Thank you, Mr. President.
So the motion is for us to adopt and ratify the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1461 and House Bill number 7054. And to insert into the records the said report. Okay. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 13 March 2018, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. 6285, an act declaring January 18 of every year a special non-working holiday for all kasambahay in the entire country to be known as Araw ng Kasambahay.
Referred to the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
7199, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to the Delta Broadcasting System, Inc. to establish, maintain, and operate radio and television broadcasting stations within the Philippines under Republic Act number 7723.
To the Committee on Public Services.
7290, an act changing the composition of the Advisory Committee of the National Council for Children's Television, amending for the purpose Section 6 of Republic Act number 8370, otherwise known as the Children's Television Act of 1997.
To the Committee on Public Information and Mass Media.
7266, an act providing for a rural employment assistance program and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development, and Finance.
7240, an act establishing a national high school in Barangay Viente Reales Nacional, Valenzuela City, to be known as Viente Reales National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance.
7241, an act establishing an elementary school in Barangay San Antonio, Parañaque City, to be known as Silverio Elementary School and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance.
7242, an act separating the Don Felix Serra National High School, Lomboyan Extension in Barangay Lomboyan, Municipality of San Joaquin, Province of Iloilo, from the Don Felix Serra National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Santa Ana National High School, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance.
7243, an act separating the Tacurong National High School, Upper Katungal Annex in Barangay Upper Katungal, Tacurong City, Province of Sultan Kudarat, from the Tacurong National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Upper Katungal National High School, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 13 March 2018, it ratified the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of House Bill number 6573, entitled An Act Prohibiting Hazing and Regulating Other Forms of Initiation Rights of Fraternities, Sororities, and Other Organizations, and providing penalties for violation thereof, repealing for the purpose Republic Act number 8049, entitled An Act Regulating Hazing and Other Forms of Initiation Rights in Fraternities, Sororities, and Other Organizations, and providing penalties therefore. Senate Bill number 1662, entitled An Act Amending Republic Act number 8049 to strengthen the law on hazing and regulate other forms of initiation rights of fraternities, sororities, and other organizations, providing penalties therefore and for other purposes.
To the Archives.
Bills on first reading. 1744, an act regulating electronic cigarettes, Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committees on Health and Demography and Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
1745, an act recognizing the civil effects of church decreed annulment, Senator Saveri.
To the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
1746, an act renaming the province of Compostela Valley to Davao de Oro Province, amending for the purpose pertinent sections of Republic Act number 8470, Senator Saveri.
To the Committee on Rules.
1747, an act further strengthening the powers and functions of the authority of the Freeport area of Bataan, amending for this purpose Republic Act number 9728, otherwise known as the Freeport Area of Bataan Act of 2009, Senator Richard J. Gordon.
To the Committees on Economic Affairs, Local Government, Ways and Means, and Finance.
1748, an act establishing the Philippine Marine Corps, defining its powers and functions, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes, Senator Zuberi.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security and Finance.
Resolutions. Resolution number 685, entitled the resolution directing the appropriate Senate committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to look into the current state of operations of the National Dairy Authority and the effectiveness and efficacy of the existing programs and policies of government on the development of the dairy industry in the country, Senator Cynthia A. Villar.
To the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
687, resolution congratulating and commending Nonito the Filipino Flash Donaire Jr. for his outstanding victory against Ruben Garcia Hernandez and for winning the World Boxing Council Silver Featherweight Championship title on September 24, 2017, held at the Alamodome in San Antonio, Texas. Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy Isbinay.
To the Committee on Rules.
Communications. Letters from the Office of the President of the Philippines transmitting to the Senate 2 original copies of the following Republic Acts, which were signed by President Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Republic Act number 10973, entitled An Act granting the Chief of the Philippine National Police and the Director and the Deputy Director for administration of the Criminal Investigation and the Detection Group the authority to administer oath and to issue subpoena and subpoena ducis tecum, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 6975 as amended, otherwise known as the Department of the Interior and Local Government Act of 1990. Republic Act number 10974, entitled An Act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Saraga Integrated and Management Corporation, under Republic Act number 7478, entitled An Act granting the Saraga Integrated and Management Corporation a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain for commercial purposes radio and television broadcasting stations in the Philippines and for other purposes. Republic Act number 10975, entitled An Act establishing a national high school in Barangay Pasong Tamo, Quezon City, Metro Manila, to be known as Emilio Jacinto National High School, and appropriating funds therefore. Republic Act number 10976, entitled An Act establishing a national high school in Barangay Paso de Blas, Valenzuela City, to be known as Paso de Blas National High School, and appropriating funds therefore. Republic Act number 10977, entitled An Act converting the San Rafael National High School in the city of Navotas into a National Technical Vocational High School, to be known as San Rafael Technological and Vocational High School, and appropriating funds therefore. Republic Act number 10978, entitled An Act separating the Parañaque National High School, Don Bosco Extension in Barangay Don Bosco, Parañaque City, from the Parañaque National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Don Bosco National High School, and appropriating funds therefore. Republic Act number 10979, entitled An Act establishing a national high school in Barangay Manlilisid, Municipality of Javier, Province of Leyte, to be known as the Manlilisid National High School, and appropriating funds therefore. Republic Act number 10980, entitled An Act changing the name of Manlabang National High School in Barangay Manlabang, Municipality of Caibiran, Province of Biliran, to Caibiran National High School. And Republic Act number 10981, entitled An Act separating the Mayor Bartolome Serot National Agricultural and Trade High School, Mosimot Annex in Barangay Mosimot, Municipality of Cabugao, Province of Apayao, from the Mayor Bartolome Serot National Agricultural and Trade High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Mosimot National High School, and appropriating funds therefore.
To the archives.
Additional reference of business. Committee reports. Committee report number 286, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Services and Science and Technology on Senate Bill number 1749, with Senators Grace Poe and Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV as authors thereof, entitled An Act to improve land transportation terminals, stations, stops, rest areas, and roll-on, roll-off terminals, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate Bill number 1695, taking into consideration House Bill number 725, Senator Grace Poe.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 287, submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Services and Finance on House Bill number 3986, introduced by Representative Ermita Buhain et al., entitled An Act converting the Land Transportation Office located in the Municipality of Balayan, Province of Batangas, into a regular LTO district office to be known as the LTO District Office of Balayan, Batangas, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee report number 288, submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Services and Finance on House Bill number 3169, introduced by Representative Marino et al., entitled An Act converting the Land Transportation Office licensing center in the City of Batangas, Province of Batangas, into a regular licensing center to be known as the Batangas City Licensing Center and of Batangas City, Batangas, and appropriating funds. Therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, taking into consideration Senate Bill number 1645, Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee report number 289, submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Services and Finance on House Bill number 4166, introduced by Representative Aragones et al., entitled An Act Converting the Land Transportation Office Licensing Center in the City of San Pablo, Province of Laguna, into a regular licensing center to be known as the San Pablo City LTO Licensing Center, and appropriating funds. Therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee report number 291, submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Services and Finance on House Bill number 2927, introduced by Representative Abaya et al., entitled An Act Converting the Land Transportation Office Licensing Center in the Municipality of Kawit, Province of Cavite, into a regular licensing center to be known as the LTO Cavite Licensing Center of Kawit, Cavite, and appropriating funds. Therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee report number 291, submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Services and Finance on House Bill number 3188, introduced by Representative Sandoval et al., entitled An Act Converting the Caloocan City Extension Office of the Land Transportation Office located in Malabon City, Metro Manila, into a regular LTO district office and appropriating funds. Therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee report number 292, submitted jointly by the Committees on Public Services and Finance on House Bill number 1875, introduced by Representative Biason et al., entitled An Act Converting the Land Transportation Office Extension Office located in Muntinlupa City into a regular LTO district office and appropriating funds. Therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, taking into consideration Senate Bill number 1651, Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee report number 293, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House Bill number 4136, introduced by Representative Salim Bangon et al., entitled An Act Renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Manila Broadcasting Company under Republic Act number 7816, entitled An Act Granting the Manila Broadcasting Company a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations within the Philippines and for other purposes, recommending its approval with amendments, Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee report number 294, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House Bill number 5635, introduced by Representative Arenas et al., entitled An Act Extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Bright Star Broadcasting Network Corporation under Republic Act number 7295, entitled An Act Granting the Bright Star Broadcasting Network Corporation a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain for commercial purposes radio and television broadcasting stations in the Philippines and for other purposes, recommending its approval with amendments, Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee report number 295, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House Bill numbers 5716, introduced by Representative Vargas et al., entitled An Act Extending for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to Vanguard Radio Network Company, Inc., and the Republic Act number 7529, entitled An Act Granting Vanguard Radio Network Company, Inc., a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in the island of Luzon and for other purposes, is amended by Republic Act Number 8069, recommending its approval with amendments. Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 296, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House Bill Number 5349, introduced by Representative Tejada et al., entitled An Act Renewing for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to Notre Dame Broadcasting Corporation under Republic Act Number 8109, entitled An Act Granting the Notre Dame Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio broadcasting stations in the Philippines for religious, educational, and cultural, as well as for commercial purposes, recommending its approval with amendments. Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 297, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House Bill Number 5556, introduced by Representative O'Malley et al., entitled An Act Extending for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to Isla Communications Company, Inc., presently known as Innovi Communications, Inc., amending for the purpose of Republic Act Number 7372, entitled An Act Granting the Isla Communications Company a franchise to install, operate, and maintain telecommunication services within the territory of the Republic of the Philippines and international points and for other purposes, recommending its approval with amendments, taking into consideration Senate Bill Number 1589, Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 298, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House Bill Number 6314, introduced by Representative Madrona et al., entitled An Act Granting Streamtech Systems Technologies, Inc., a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain telecommunication systems throughout the Philippines, recommending its approval with amendments. Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business.
Committee Report Number 299, submitted by the Committee on Public Services on House Bill Number 5559, introduced by Representative Lubrigat et al., entitled An Act Extending for Another 25 Years the franchise granted to Ermita Electronics Incorporated, presently known as G Telecoms, Inc., amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 8196, entitled An Act Granting the Ermita Electronics Incorporated a franchise to construct, install, establish, maintain, and operate radio communications systems in the Philippines, recommending its approval with amendments. Senator Grace Poe.
Ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, scheduled for today's sponsorship are 7 broadcast and telcos House bills in various parts of the country. So similar to what we did last time, we will again make a motion for the body's concurrence for an omnibus sponsorship on the measures by the Chair of the Public Services Committee. However, for purposes of its passage for second and third readings, we will be taking it up one at a time. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection to the proposed to the procedure proposed by the Majority Leader? Hearing none, it is approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders the following bills. House Bill 4136 under Committee Report Number 293, House Bill 5349 under Committee Report Number 296, House Bill 5635 under Committee Report Number 294, House Bill 5176 under Committee Report Number 295, House Bill 5556 under Committee Report Number 297, House Bill 6314 under Committee Report Number 298, and House Bill 5559 under Committee Report Number 299.
Is it the House Bill 5716, Majority Leader, or 5176?
5176, Mr. President. That is the fourth House bill.
Secretariat, can you check? On my record, say it must be House Bill number 5716. 5716.
Mr. President,
5716, majority leader.
5716.
Okay.
I submit to the record.
Okay, with that clarification, any objection to the motion? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to consider House Bill 4136 under Committee Report number 293, House Bill 5349 under Committee Report number 296, House Bill 5635 under Committee Report number 294, and House Bill 5716 under Committee Report number 295, House Bill 5556 under Committee Report number 297, House Bill 6314 under Committee Report number 298, and House Bill 5559 under Committee Report 299.
Any objection? Hearing none, the said measures are now under consideration.
Mr. President, may you ask the Secretary to read the short title of all the measures?
Secretary, please do so.
House Bill number 4136, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Manila Broadcasting Company under Republic Act number 7816. House Bill number 5349, an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Notre Dame Broadcasting Corporation under Republic Act number 8109. House Bill number 5635, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Bright Star Broadcasting Network Corporation under Republic Act number 7295. House Bill number 5716, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Vanguard Radio Network Company, Inc. under Republic Act number 7529. House Bill number 556, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Isla Communications Company, Inc., presently known as the Innovi Communications, Inc., amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7372. House Bill number 6314, an act granting Stream Tech Systems Technologies, Inc., a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain telecommunication systems throughout the Philippines. House Bill number 559, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Ermita Electronics Incorporated, presently known as G Telecoms, Inc., amending for the purpose Republic Act number 8196.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to sponsor the above-mentioned measures, may we ask the Chairman of the Committee on Public Services, Senator Grace Poe, be recognized.
Senator Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, may I request to use the audiovisual and the visual screen. Mr. President, as chairperson of the Senate Committee on Public Services, it is my honor to deliver my omnibus sponsorship speech for Committee Reports 293, 294, 295, and 296. These committee reports recommend the approval of 3 House bills which seek to extend the legislative franchise of different broadcasting companies. For brevity, I will state only the numbers of the House bills and give a brief description of each. House Bill number 4136 under Committee Report 293, which seeks to extend for another 25 years the legislative franchise granted to Manila Broadcasting Company. House Bill number 5635 under Committee Report 294, which seeks to extend for another 25 years the legislative franchise granted to Bright Star Broadcasting Network Corporation. House Bill number 5349 under Committee Report 296, which seeks to extend for another 25 years the franchise of Notre Dame Broadcasting Corporation, and House Bill number 5716, which seeks to, under Committee Report 295, which seeks to extend for another 25 years the franchise of Vanguard Radio Network Company Incorporated. Isa-isa po nating kilalanin ang mga broadcasting company na ito. Unahin natin ang Manila Broadcasting Company, which is known by its call sign of DZRH. Nagsimula ang operasyon ng Manila Broadcasting Company bilang KZRH noong 1939. Mula noon, malaki ang papel na ginampanan nila sa kasaysayan ng ating bansa. Noong sumiklab ang digmaang pandaigdig, nakilala ang KZRH bilang The Voice of Freedom. Noong nag-broadcast si Pangulong Quezon mula sa Corregidor. Kasi sa KZRH din narinig ang pagsuko ng mga puwersang Amerikano sa hukbong Hapones, at sa KZRH narinig ng mga Pilipino ang pagtatag ng ikalawang Republika ng Pilipinas at ang inaugurasyon ni Pangulong Rojas. At hindi natapos doon ang papel ng DZRH. Naroon sila noong kumalas si Defense Secretary Juan Ponce Enrile at General Fidel Ramos sa EDSA noong 1986. Naroon sila sa mga sunod-sunod na kudeta laban sa Pangulong Corazon Aquino. At naroon sila sa panahon ng Pangulong Joseph Estrada, Arroyo at Noynoy Aquino. At maging sa ngayon, patuloy silang nagmamatyag sa mga kaganapang bumubuo ng ating kasaysayan, at ginawa nila ito habang nagbibigay aliw sa pamamagitan ng musika, drama at maging mga game show na kaakibat ng programa ng edukasyon, gayon din ang pagbibigay ng values education. Mr. President, pangalawa ang Bright Star Broadcasting Network Corporation sa ating mga tatalakayin. Known by its station ID of Retro 105.9 DCG-FM, Bright Star plays a diverse mix of retro pop, dance, hip-hop, rap, R&B, new wave, and soul music. They mainly cater to the independent, self-sufficient, adult decision makers in the ABC market. This includes live streamers from abroad. Bright Star is also currently striving to be of service to the Filipino people through the delivery of timely and accurate news and information, as well as relevant education and social programs. Third is Notre Dame Broadcasting Corporation, which was originally granted a franchise in Republic Act No. 8109. Notre Dame is based in Kidapawan and has at present 3 FM and 2 AM commercial broadcast stations. Last but not least is Vanguard Radio Network Company, Inc. Itinatag naman ng Vanguard noong 1961. Nagpapatakbo sila ng broadcast stations sa Cabanatuan, Baguio, La Union, Solano, Kawayan, Tuguegarao at Tagbilaran. Layunin rin ng Vanguard at ng Notre Dame na magbigay impormasyon, magturo, magbigay aliw, magbigay ng positibong impluwensya at mag-empower gamit ang kanilang broadcasting services. Nagsisikap sila na ipaalam sa mga tao ang produkto at serbisyo ng mga maliliit na negosyante sa kanilang broadcast area, at katuwang rin ang Vanguard sa mabilis na paghatid ng balita, pagbibigay ng relief o tulong at pagbangon ng komunidad. It's safe to say that Vanguard wears many hats. Hindi lang sila broadcaster kundi salesman ng mga maliliit na negosyante at taga-abot tulong sa mga nasasalanta. Beginning with this batch of broadcast franchises, the committee deems it fit to integrate a new provision mandating the grantees to create a decent and productive employment opportunities, as well as apprenticeship programs or on-the-job trainings for students and young Filipinos. The provision should be consistent with the labor standards ordained in existing law and should be reflected in the General Information Sheet submitted annually to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Kinonsulta ko po ang mga aplikante na kasama ng pribilehiyo ng prangkisa ay magbigay sila ng trabaho, Mr. President. Hindi lang pwedeng pribilehiyong binibigay sa kanila, kailangan meron din silang commitment na sila ay magbibigay ng trabaho na permanente at magbibigay rin ng mga on-the-job training sa ating mga estudyante. Oportunidad at kasanayan para sa ating mga kababayan. trabaho, maraming trabaho para sa ating mga mamamayan. And for the record, Mr. President, the committee subjected these 3 franchise extension bills to intense scrutiny. After all, broadcasting services are the nervous system of our society as they connect communities and families through a seamless flow of information. Congress has the responsibility to ensure that only the most qualified and most responsible individuals and organizations should be granted this privilege. Naniniwala ang komite na hindi para sa lahat, hindi pwede sa lahat ang prangkisa na ibinibigay ng Kongreso. Kailangan dito ang ating mabusising gabay at patnubay. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues and guests, magandang hapon muli. As chairperson of the Committee on Public Services, I rise to sponsor 3 franchises for telecommunications. Innovate Communications, Inc., under Senate Bill number 1589, taking into consideration House Bill number 5556, StreamTech Systems Technology Incorporated, under House Bill number 6314, and G Telecoms Incorporated, under House Bill number 5559. These are covered by Committee Reports 297, 298, and 299. Mr. President, I'm sure most of us have heard the name of American psychologist Abraham Maslow, who studied motivation back in 1940s and designed a model where the needs of human beings were arranged in a hierarchy. The hierarchy is often depicted as a pyramid with the basic needs at the bottom and self-actualization needs at the top. Fast forward to the 21st century, where Maslow's hierarchy of needs has just become another viral internet meme. Yesterday, I saw a modified version of Maslow's pyramid where internet has been added as the most fundamental human need. In addition to the long-established human needs for food, safety, love, and self-esteem. This is no longer surprising. In this day and age, the internet has become an extension of ourselves as the main highway for information exchange. The denial of its access is now considered a breach of human rights. In fact, in 2016, the United Nations declared internet access as a basic human right. It proclaimed during the 32nd session of the Human Rights Council that the same rights that people have offline must also be protected online. This is in total recognition of the fact that internet has become an indispensable part of our lives. Today, activities in schools, businesses, government, and communities, even our own homes, are reliant on efficient broadband service. Ngayon, kapag brownout, hindi na ang madilim na paligid ang nirereklamo, kundi ang kawalan ng Wi-Fi. Sa mga opisina naman, marami ang bugnot na tuwing bumabagal ang internet connection. Can you imagine working without email or chat services? How many businesses meetings almost never happened because your text messages were either late or was never received? Many of our drivers survive hellish traffic conditions with the use of internet-reliant navigation apps. According to the 2018 Global Digital Reports by We Are Social, a London-based consultancy company, and Hootsuite, Canada-based social media management platform, the number of internet users is 4.21 billion. A check on internetstats.com hours before this Senate session started revealed that there are around 3.8 billion real-time internet users. And for the 3rd year in a row, the Philippines topped the survey in terms of time spent both on the internet and social media. Filipinos spend up to 9 hours a day on the internet and 4 hours on social media, the highest rates among the 239 countries surveyed. Even kids as young as 10 years old carry smartphones, tablets, and other handheld devices and have access to internet. According to studies, an average human being can live without air for 3 minutes, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. But I cannot imagine how long can a Filipino survive without internet. Despite these mind-blowing figures, more than half of the world's population still does not have access to internet, with Asia and Africa having the lowest rates of access according to a United Nations report. And what is worse is that the internet speed in the Philippines is staggeringly slow. According to the February 2018 statistics from the Speed Test Global Index, the Philippines ranked 93 out of 123 countries with an average mobile broadband speed of 12.67 Mbps compared with a global average of 22.16 Mbps. In terms of fixed broadband service, we are ranked 87th out of 130 countries with an average speed of 16.9 Mbps with a global average speed at 42.71. One is tempted to think in jest that the reason why Filipinos spend so much time on social media is because it takes too long to view a post, look at a photo, or watch a video. Mr. President, I cannot overemphasize the importance of telecommunications in providing technological foundation for societal communications, for enabling participation and development, and for sustaining economic growth, and for providing the necessary infrastructure for national security. Innovate, Streamtech, and G Telecoms have all committed to bring the telecommunications sector of the Philippines into greater heights. All these three have further vowed to take part in nation-building initiatives into advancing the quality of life of our fellow kababayans. For its part, Globe, in partnership with Gawad Kalinga, Micro Cooperatives, the University of the Philippines, and Facebook, is empowering more off-grid communities around the country through an innovative, low-cost technology called Network in a Box, NIB, Bridges. The digital divide is in isolated communities by deploying small-scale community cellular networks, addressing the lack of fundamental mobile communication service in rural and unserved areas. Through its corporate social responsibility, Globe provides other financial and infrastructure support, such as Connect SIMs and very small aperture satellite, VSAT, equipment to its community partners. These have been implemented in the municipalities of Tanay in Rizal, Talisay in Quezon, San Luis, and Dingalan in the province of Aurora, with 7 more currently under deployment in remote rural barangays in the Visayas region. For Streamtech Systems Technologies, Inc. aims to participate as one of the new major telecommunications players in the Philippines, as the country direly needs other players to address long-standing problems in the industry. It intends to set up cable landing stations in different parts of the Philippines to serve as critical components in providing reliable and diverse links within the Philippines and with other countries. G Telecoms, and for its part, G Telecoms, through its IGSat broadband, aims to partner with the government in providing reliable and high-speed internet even to far-flung areas, equipped to provide communication, command and control, and monitoring capabilities. IGSat broadband can also support our brave men and women of the armed forces in its peacekeeping operations. Mr. President, opening the telecommunications sector to other players will not only mean improved competition, better quality of service and products, and lowered prices. This would now also mean more employment. I start with pride today as I share with this august chamber that beginning with this batch of telco franchises, the committee deems it fit to integrate a new provision mandating the grantees to create decent and productive employment as well as apprenticeship programs or on-the-job training for students and young Filipinos. The provision should be consistent with the labor standards ordained in existing law and should be reflected in the General Information Sheet submitted annually to the Security and Exchange Commission. Kinonsulto ko ang ating mga aplikante na kasama ng pribileyo ng prangkisa ay ang pagbibigay ng trabaho, oportunidad at kasanayan sa ating mga kababayan. Trabaho, muli, maraming trabaho para sa ating mga mamamayan. Ngayon, hindi lang dapat third player ang hinahanap natin. Kung may pang-4, pang-5, o kahit na pang-100 pa, at ang hatid ay maraming trabaho para sa ating mga kababayan, bakit hindi natin sila pagbuksan ng pinto? excellent and top-of-the-line services, and people-oriented companies. These are what every hardworking Filipino rightfully deserves. Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to give time for the other senators to study the proposed measures, I move to suspend consideration of the earlier enumerated House bills.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, also scheduled for today's sponsorship are 7 Senate and House bills on LTO conversion and improvement in various parts of the country. So similar to what we did last time, we'll again make a motion for the body's concurrence for an omnibus sponsorship on the measures by the chair of the Public Services Committee. However, for purposes of its passage for second and third readings, we'll be taking it up one at a time. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President. Mr. President, can we request for a 1 minute suspension?
Session suspended. Queenie, bakit?
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, we withdraw the previous motion on the LTO conversion and improvement. And instead, with the permission of the body.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to consider for second reading Senate Bill 1633, which is part of the recommendation of proposed Senate Resolution number 92 under Committee Report number 197 that was sponsored and adopted earlier.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, may we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
The Secretary is directed to read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 1633, an act amending Section 9 of Presidential Decree 1586 by increasing the penalties thereof and for other purposes.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we ask that the Chair of the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Senator Richard Gordon, be recognized.
The sponsor is recognized. Senator Gordon.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and with the permission of the body. Good afternoon, fellow senators. I'm honored to sponsor today Senate Bill number 1633, which is really part of the recommendations of the committee report number 197, wherein the Committees on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Blue Ribbon, and the Environment and Natural Resources have conducted an inquiry in aid of legislation into the reported destructive mining operations by 4 mining companies and illegal excavations in the province of Zambales, as well as the allegations of breaches of our national security, which was initiated through proposed Senate Resolution number 92 filed by the good Senator Panfilo Lacson. During the hearings, the committees found that despite millions of pesos, which should have been accounted for damages to farms, water, air, and livelihood, only a fine not exceeding 50,000 pesos may be imposed upon an erring person, corporation, or partnership for every violation thereof as provided in Section 9 of Presidential Decree number 1586 entitled Establishing an Environmental Impact Statement System, including other environmental management related measures and for other purposes. Taking into consideration such minimal amount as provided by the law, it may no longer be apt considering the cost of the damage done by the violators. It is high time, therefore, that the penalties embodied in the law be increased. For if it is to be taken seriously, the penal provisions thereon must be strengthened. As stated in the landmark case of Oposa versus Factoran, every generation has a responsibility to the next to preserve that rhythm and harmony for the full enjoyment of a balanced and healthful ecology. With the immediate passage of this bill, the ridiculously low penalties provided for in law will be addressed as to better ensure and safeguard our environment, not only for the present generation, but also for the future generation. Further, as earlier proposed by Senator Drilon in a private discussion with the undersigned, the committee will be introducing an amendment to the bill at the proper time to amend all references pertaining to the Minister of Human Settlements as provided in PD number 1586 to be amended as the Secretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues.
Mr. President, to give time for the other senators to study the bill, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1633 under Committee Report number 197.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to consider for second reading Senate Bill number 1634, which is part of the recommendation of proposed Senate Resolution number 92 under Committee Report number 197 that was sponsored and adopted earlier.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, may we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure?
Secretary is directed to read the title of the measure.
An act providing for the mandatory domestic processing of all mineral, ores before exportation and the certification showing presence or lack of rare earth elements, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7942, otherwise known as the Philippine Mining Act of 1995, and for other purposes.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we ask that the Chair of the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, Senator Richard Gordon, be recognized.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Majority Floor Leader. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I stand again to sponsor Senate Bill number 1634, a companion bill to the previous bill that I just sponsored. Mr. President, this is also part of the recommendations of Committee Report number 197, together with Senate Bill number 1633, as already stated, which seeks to increase the mining penalties provided in Section 9 of the Presidential Decree number 1586. During the conducted committee hearings, we came to know that the Philippines is a good target for rare earth elements exploration. At present, we are exporting minerals and black sand to countries like China at a selling price lower than the London Metal Exchange, or LME, price. From what we learned, black sand has very high iron content and other elements such as titanium, vanadium, scandium, among others. However, we only get 10% of the LME price because we sell it as ore, not as rare earth elements, which are more expensive than gold. Hence, there is a need for prior required inspection to screen what minerals are being exported out to determine whether or not it is more valuable and expensive than its selling price. If you go to areas in the country, especially in the south, there's hardly any inspection being conducted on all the black sand that is being shipped out of the country, Mr. President. Thus, taking into consideration the Latin maxim, caveat venditor, which means let the seller beware. We are the sellers, Mr. President, and therefore we should really cover that due diligence required to make sure that we are not gypped or shortchanged. In addition, the proposed bill requires that all extracted minerals be first processed within the country before being exported. It aims to jumpstart development of our country's mineral processing industry and to enhance the value of our mineral products. In the end, it seeks to generate additional domestic income and raise the value of Philippine mineral products for us to ensure that we are not being shortchanged. Hence, the immediate passage of the bill is earnestly sought in the best interest of our country. Again, thank you, Mr. President, and my esteemed colleagues.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to give time for the other senators to study the bill, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1634 under Committee Report number 197.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, can we request for a 1 minute suspension?
Session is suspended.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, also scheduled for today's sponsorship are 7 Senate and House bills on LTO conversion and improvement in various parts of the country. So similar to what we did last time, we will again make a motion for the body's concurrence for an omnibus sponsorship on the measures by the Chair of the Public Services Committee. However, for purposes of its passage for second and third readings, we will be taking it up one at a time. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, if it's all right with the Majority Floor Leader, I'd just like to manifest, before we move on other matters away from the franchises earlier, if I, with the permission of the author, Senator Grace Poe, if I could be made co-author and sponsor of House Bill number 4136, that's an act renewing for another 25 years the franchise granted to Manila Broadcasting Company. With the permission of the sponsor.
I have no objection, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Subiri. Mr. President, move to recognize Senator Gordon.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to join and be associated with this proposal and join the proposal of Senator Mix that I be co-author. MBC has done salutary work in our country as DCRH and other important and responsible distribution of news, Mr. President. And therefore, I'd like to be associated with the proposal to be made a co-author of this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
My understanding is that the manifestation of the two gentlemen would be co-sponsor because these are
Yes,
House
sir.
bills and there are
Co-sponsor,
no Senate bills to speak of. So co-sponsor.
Co-sponsor.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders the following bills. House Bill 3188 under Committee Report number 291. House Bill 4166 under Committee Report number 289. Senate Bill 1651 under Committee Report number 292. House Bill 3169 under Committee Report number 288. House Bill 3986 under Committee Report number 287. House Bill 927 under Committee Report number 290. And Senate Bill 1749 under Committee Report number 286.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to consider House Bill 3188 under Committee Report number 291, House Bill 4166 under Committee Report number 289, Senate Bill 1651 under Committee Report number 292, House Bill 3169 under Committee Report number 288, House Bill 3986 under Committee Report number 287, House Bill 927 under Committee Report number 290, and Senate Bill 1749 under Committee Report number 286. Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
May you ask the Secretary to read the short title of all the measures?
The Secretariat is directed to read the title of all the measures.
House Bill number 3188, an act converting the Caloocan City Extension Office of the Land Transportation Office, located in Malabon City, Metro Manila, into a regular LTO district office. House Bill number 4166, an act converting the Land Transportation Office Licensing Center in the city of San Pablo, province of Laguna, into a regular licensing center. House Bill number 3169, an act converting the Land Transportation Office Licensing Center in the city of Batangas, province of Batangas, into a regular licensing center. House Bill number 3986, an act converting the Land Transportation Office located in the municipality of Balayan, province of Batangas, into a regular LTO district office. House Bill number 927, an act converting the Land Transportation Office Licensing Center in the municipality of Kawit, province of Cavite, into a regular licensing center. An act to improve land transportation terminals, stations, stops, rest areas, and roll-on, roll-off terminals, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes.
Mr. President, to sponsor the mentioned measures, may we ask the Chairman of the Committee on Public Services, Senator Grace Poe, be recognized.
Senator Poe is recognized.
Mr. President, as chairperson of the Senate Committee on Public Services, it is my honor to deliver my omnibus sponsorship speech on committee report numbers 287, 288, 289, 290, 291, and 292. These committee reports recommend the adoption without amendment of 7 Senate and House bills which seek to convert various LTO extension offices into regular LTO district offices. For brevity, I will only mention the bill numbers and briefly describe them. Senate Bill number 1645, taking into consideration House Bill number 3188, which seeks to convert the LTO extension office in Batangas City into a regular district office. Senate Bill number 1651, taking into consideration House Bill number 1875, seeking to convert the LTO extension office in Muntinlupa City into a regular district office. House Bill number 927, which seeks to convert the LTO extension in Kawit, Cavite into a regular district office. House Bill number 3188, which seeks to convert the LTO extension office in Caloocan City, located in Malabon, into a regular district office. And House Bill number 3986, which seeks to convert the LTO extension office in Balayan, Batangas, into a regular district office. Mr. President, just barely a year ago, we enacted Republic Act number 10930, which extended the validity of driver's licenses to 5 years and further renewable for a period of 10 years if the license holder has not committed any violation. When I sponsored that measure, I mentioned that motorists would benefit through shorter lines for license applications renewal. However, our push to better serve the motoring public does not end there. We must ensure that the frontline officers of the LTO can actually implement the law that we passed. A law without a capable implementing agency is just a paper mandate. Take, for example, the LTO Extension Office in Malabon, Bulacan. It was established in 1978 when cars such as the Ford Cortina, Opel, Manta, and Toyota Cressida ply the streets of Metro Manila. The office currently serves 20 barangays in Malabon City, plus all drivers, license transactions from Navota City, handling an average of 350 transactions every day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Despite this heavy workload, the Malabon City LTO office has only 16 personnel, which are borrowed from other district offices. Job order personnel are designated to key positions that are supposed to be given to regular employees with greater responsibility. And the current head of the Malabon City LTO Extension Office has a salary grade of 18. The fiscal hawks of this chamber would know that this is just above the entry level for a legislative staff. Mr. President, this is just one example of the issues which emerged when the committee tackled these extension offices. The transactions which they handle on a daily basis have clearly exceeded their internal capacity. This is the policy threshold under LTO Memorandum Circular. Furthermore, legislative action is needed as these extension offices were created merely through administrative orders. Thus, they are inherently limited in terms of capacity and budget. Converting LTO extension offices into regular LTO district offices would, in effect, mean faster processing of transactions and hopefully shorter queues. However, let me state that legislative action is not a magic pill for all the problems of the LTO bureaucracy. I will not hesitate to hold these offices accountable during the budget season if there are reports of inefficiency or corruption after this measure is enacted into law. These offices must not forget, with greater power is greater accountability. Or in millennial speak, more huerpa begets more responsibility. Having said all of that, I thus seek the speedy approval of 4 um, I, I, having said all these, I therefore seek the approval of 4 of these bills under the committee report stated. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President,
Senator
As-
Poe is recognized.
as chairperson, this is the last for today. As chairperson of the Senate Committee on Public Services, it is also my honor to sponsor Senate Bill number 1749, or an act to improve the land transportation terminals, stations, stops, rest areas, and roll-on, roll-off terminals, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. This is under Committee Report 286. This measure is in substitution of Senate Bill number 1695, filed by this representation, and takes into consideration the approved House Bill number 725, authored by Representatives Dalog, Revilla, Dalipe, Pimentel, Gonzales, Castelo, Biazon, Sambar, Sarmiento, and Primicias Agabas. Mr. President, malapit ang pagbibiyahe sa kultura at damdamin ng Pilipino. According to the long-term vision of the National Economic and Development Authority, NEDA study, Ambisyon Natin 2040, Filipinos consider traveling as one of the signs that their family is living well. Maginawang buhay kapag nakakapagbiyahe ang pamilya. Suportado po ito ng datos ng Philippine Statistics Authority. Ayon sa PSA, 42 million na Pilipino ang naglakbay noong 2016. This is equivalent to 58% of the population aged 15 and above. Kaya siguro, buhay na buhay ang turismo sa Pilipinas. Ayon muli sa PSA, domestic tourism expenditure reached 2.108 billion in 2016. Long-distance land transportation is an important part of traveling in the country. Kung aakit ka ng Baguio upang magpalamig, ikaw ay babiyahe ng 5 hanggang 6 na oras sa bus. Kung nais mong mag-surfing sa San Juan, La Union o sa Baler, Aurora, ay aabutin ka rin ng 6 hanggang 7 oras sa bus. 8 hanggang 10 oras naman kung babiyaheng Ilocos para sa heritage towns ng probinsya o sa masasarap na laing at spicy food ng Bicolandia. Along the tens of thousands of kilometers of lengthy roads all around the country, land transportation terminals, stations, stops, and rest areas, which are like sanctuaries for travelers using land transportation. Minsan, parang game show ang paggamit ng mga ito. Behind door number 1, malinis na comfort room na may tubig at sabon. Behind door number 2, CR na marumi, na walang amenities, kahit ano. The present measure seeks to improve land transportation terminals, stations, stops, rest areas, and roll-on, roll-off terminals through simple, effective, and practical measures. Mr. President, I'm sure you've traveled and seen these for yourself. I mean, sometimes we have to go to gas stations and use the restrooms there, and we can't even use it if we don't fill up or we don't buy anything from their store. During our committee hearings, we came up with the following simple but effective proposals. First, this measure seeks to mandate owners, operators, or administrators of land transportation terminals, stations, stops, rest areas, and ro-ro terminals to provide clean sanitary facilities for passengers. This measure harmonizes existing laws and regulations on this matter, such as Code on Sanitation of the Philippines and LTFRB's guidelines for off-street terminal operations.
Does the lady want a minute suspension?
Let's get this over with. Second, it seeks to prohibit the collection of fees from passengers for the use of sanitary facilities in transport terminals. This institutionalizes the LTFRB's existing guidelines on the same issue. Third, this measure seeks to mandate the provision of free internet in these terminals. Mr. President, kasama po ito dapat sa pagpapatupad ng mga probisyon ng Republic Act No. 10929 or the Free Internet Access in Public Places Act. Pinag-iibayan natin lalo na mapabuti ang access sa Wi-Fi ng mga pasaherong Pilipino. Ito ay suportado ng DICT at ng mismo mga operators ng bus at samahan ng land transportation sa bansa. Finally, this measure seeks to mandate the establishment of at least one location station which shall be separate from the sanitary facilities. This provision will complement and hasten the necessary standard defined in another law, Republic Act number 7600, as amended by Republic Act number 10028, otherwise known as the Expanded Breastfeeding Promotion Act of 2009. Mr. President, for the record, we will also include terminals of the roll-on, roll-off system in the coverage of this bill. Our ro-ro vessels are the conveyances of the sea. We should also make sure that those terminals are also clean and comfortable for the traveling public. Mr. President, this measure is a win-win proposal. It will improve the experience of weary Filipino travelers who use these transport terminals during their long stops. It is an improvement which will be immediately seen and felt. Agad ito mararamdaman pag nagbabiyahe ang ating mga kababayan kasamang kanilang mga anak. Ang hirap gumamit ng mga pasilidad na ito pag marumi. Bukod sa, pwede pa silang magkasakit kung gamitin nila yon. Siguro naman, ito ay nakakaangat ng integridad at pagtingin natin sa isa't isa pag may respeto sa mga ganitong uring bagay. At kaagad-agad, mapapansin ang batas na ito na nakatulong sa ating mga kababayan. Tuwing papasok ka sa mga pasilidad na ganito at nakita mong malinis, magaan na kaagad ang iyong pakiramdam. Mr. President, Filipino travelers, 79% of domestic travelers in 2016, spent around 476 pesos on land transportation. Suklian naman natin sila ng mga transport terminals na may malinis at libre na banyo, maayos na lactation station at libreng Wi-Fi. This representation thus prays for the speedy consideration and approval of this measure in plenary para hindi naman parang game show ang pagpasok natin sa banyo. Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to give time for the other senators to study the proposed measures, I move to suspend consideration of the earlier enumerated House bills.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1578 under Committee Report number 162.
Is there any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, this is your proposed measure, Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development Act. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we are still in the period of interpellation. May I therefore move to recognize the sponsor, Senator J.V. Ejercito.
Senator J.V. Ejercito is recognized to sponsor the measure.
And to interpellate the Minority Leader, Senator
The
Dillon.
Minority Leader, Frank Dillon, is recognized to interpellate on the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, will the gentleman, chairman of our Committee on Housing, sponsor of the measure, yield the floor to some questions on the proposed bill creating the Department of Housing and Urban Development under Committee Report 162.
Yes, certainly, Mr. President, of course, from our distinguished Minority Leader.
Mr. President, as the records will show, we have committed to support this bill. We see the need for the creation of a Department of Housing. But going through the bill, there are certain issues which we intend to raise, particularly on the parameters and the structure of the department. I will first initially raise two areas of concern, which, if answered to our, if the answers are consistent with what we have in mind, we can shorten the period of interpretation. The first issue is the bill, as found in section Section 4, in Section 4 of the bill, page 4, intends to create a Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development as a consolidation of the Housing and Urban Development Coordinating Council, or HUDCC, and the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, under the present HUDCC was created under Executive Order 90, which was issued by then President Cory Aquino as part of her legislative powers on December 12, 1986. Is that a correct statement, Mr. President?
Yes,
December 7.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. President.
Now, under Executive Order number 90, can I have page? No, this one. Yeah, okay. Under Executive Order number 90, which is the law that created the HUDCC, the primary mandate and function of the HUDCC is policy making and coordination. It is the highest policy-making body on housing and urban development and the coordinator of programs of key shelter agencies. Is that concept retained in the bill, for the record?
Yes, but expanded to include urban development functions.
Yes, that's correct, but expanded to create to include urban development functions.
All right. Urban development function. But basically, it is the department will be for planning and policy making, program coordination, performance monitoring, a regulator and adjudicating entity for all housing and human development concerns, as stated from lines 1 to 5 on page 5 of the bill.
Yes, that's correct, but the adjudication will be left to the HSAC,
Right.
the Human Settlements Adjudication Committee.
Yes, but part of the department now but principally the department, apart from adjudication, will simply be the planning, policy making, regulatory, program coordination, and performance monitoring. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It is very critical because how the department will function will depend upon how the department will be structured will depend upon the purpose for which it is being formed, so that it is the implementation is left to the key shelter agencies, the key KSAs. Is that correct, for the record?
Yes, that's correct.
It is not the department proper which will implement. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, so that Mr. President, this is clear, and therefore the amendments later on would be very clear that the department is only for planning and program coordination, monitoring, plans, and the implementation will be left to the key shelter agencies like the NHA, etc. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Because that will be, the interpolation will be shortened and the amendment will be easier if we keep in mind that this is the purpose and power of the department. The second concept that we would like to see is that the present jurisdiction of the HLURB, just jurisdiction, should be maintained. There should be no expansion of jurisdiction. I am not talking about the structure, just the jurisdiction. Would you agree with that?
Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader, I'd just like to read you the additional jurisdictions. Case filed by project owners, developers against buyers. At present, there is a split jurisdiction. Causes of action arise from the rights and obligations of the parties under the same contract to sell. Condominium corporation cases filed to and same ground as home. And RA 7279 cases.
Mr. President, we have a basic problem. If the way the bill is written, there is really an expansion of the jurisdiction of what is now HLURB, which will result in the expansion of the bureaucracy and a confusion as to the jurisdiction of the SEC and the regular courts. Whereas now it is clear, the present situation is clear, with the amendments with this bill, if we are going to follow this bill, then there will be an expanded jurisdiction. I will give one example. The treatment and placing the condominium corporations under the HLURB on the pretext that these are housing associations. It cannot be done, Mr. President. A condominium corporation, the unit owners are stockholders. They are not simply homeowners and include them in the jurisdiction of the HLURB because of if it's a dispute between the homeowner and the developer. Far from that, Mr. President. It requires disputes in condominium corporations require a specialized knowledge which the SEC provides. And other instances, other issues arising from the corporation code and the relationship between the buyer and the seller is governed by the jurisdiction of the regular courts. The reason why we are creating a huge bureaucracy of the, how do you call it, the board, the Human Settlements Adjudication Commission is that we are expanding the jurisdiction. We are creating a parallel National Labor Relations Commission. And this is being justified because there is jurisdiction is broadened. And we have very serious problems about that. Now, if we agree that the HLURB's functions and jurisdiction will be taken over by the new Human Settlements Adjudication Commission or board, we have no problems with that. But we have problems when we expand the jurisdiction of the new body. So if we just maintain the present jurisdiction, we should have no problem.
Yes, we submit to the wisdom of the minority leader, and the sponsor is will just accept if you would propose amendments.
So very good. So we can work together on the amendment so that the creation of that body will not result in such an expanded bureaucracy brought about by the expanded jurisdiction. Is that a correct statement, sir?
Yes, I will just, we're open to your proposed amendment.
Yes, okay. So, so we can just go over very quickly some of the provisions of this bill guided by that general agreement on the governing principles in the creation of the Department of Housing. For example, on page 3 of the bill, it defines human settlements to include services, to include, quote, letter B, services to which the physical elements provide support, such as community services, which includes education, health, culture, welfare, recreation, and nutrition. If we have agreed that the new department is simply policy making, we don't believe that this kind of definition should be here, because this is too broad and will encroach on other departments, such as the Department of Education, Department of Health, Department of Social Welfare and Development, etc. So if we can just delete this at the appropriate time.
Well, the reason also, Mr. President, distinguished minority leader, why we chose to use the name Department of Human Settlements, because more encompassing, wider coverage, because we don't want, because if the way it sounds, the Department of Housing, people might think it's just the construction of the houses, but this would need you have to think about the transportation, for example, the health services, the amenities, the utilities, transportation hub, education, water, etc. So that was the primary reason why we chose to use the human settlements.
Mr. President, at the appropriate time, we would propose that instead of human settlements, which precisely broadens the coverage and concept, to include other areas which can encroach on the mandates of the other departments. Precisely, we want to limit it to the Department of Housing and provide provision and provide for provisions which will make sure that it's not simply construction of housing, but urban development, for example. So if we can have Department of Housing and Urban Development, which is the concept of the bills filed, at least 4 of the bills filed. So if we can agree on that, would have no problem. It's Department of Housing and Urban Development to include other areas of concern.
Yes, Mr. President, my distinguished minority leader, we are amenable to that. And the more important thing is that at least the urban development would be included. That is more important.
So it can be Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Yes, that's a more important thing for the measure.
We agree. Okay. Why do we have to define informal settler families? We notice that it is that this definition really is. I mean, we do not find the need to define this because I don't know where this will be applied. There is only one section of the bill which touches on informal settler families, and that's on on section 5E. That's the only reference when it says formulate and implement housing policies and programs in coordination with the key shelter agencies for urban poor communities and informal settler families. That is the only time when the phrase is used in the entire bill. So maybe at the appropriate time, if the sponsor will agree, we can just delete this definition of informal settler families.
Well, the reason being, Mr. Minority Leader, is that we have been using the informal settlers in operation, but in reality, in statistics, but there is no definition yet of informal settlers.
Well, yeah.
In law.
Yeah. It was just our desire to make the bill shorter, and but if there is really a need for, I mean, if there is really a need to define, we have no very strong feelings about this. So, okay, with the department, as we have agreed, will be now known as Department of Housing and Urban Development. And if we remove, therefore, the human settlements, the appropriate amendments on referring to human settlements would be deleted at the appropriate time, just housing and urban development. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. President.
Again, as part of our agreement, on page 5, line 21, the word implement will be deleted at the appropriate time because it says as the power of the department, it says formulate and implement housing policies and programs. We have agreed that the implementation will be done by the key shelter agencies, not the department. Is that
Yes,
correct?
we agree, Distinguished Minority Leader.
As a general question, all references to the power to implement on the part of the department will be deleted when the appropriate period comes, because then that will be consistent with the department being policy making and program program formulator, etc.
Yes, that's correct.
The implementation being to the key shelter agencies, which is more streamlined. On page 7, line 15, it says that the power of the department is to manage and oversee the development of proclaimed housing sites, including the use of these land assets as resource mobilization strategy to raise alternative resources in developing new housing projects and efficient financing programs either by itself or through its attached agencies. I assume it's attached agencies. What does this exactly mean? Is the department going to engage in financing? What exactly does this lines 15 to 18, Mr. President?
Mr. President, the proclamation of existing housing sites are existing functions of HUD-C as of the moment, but
isn't this delegated to the shelter agencies, raising of resources?
I know, it's the function of the HUD-C.
Yes. So, is the HUD-C, how you're saying that, Mr. President, the gentleman sponsor is saying this is an existing power. How is this implemented? Because the way I understand the provision, you can mobilize, you can raise alternative resources, meaning that you can use the housing sites as a resource base for financing. And I thought that this is more the function of the attached of the key shelter agencies, particularly the NHA or Pag-ibig, etc. I'm just a little concerned about the way this is phrased, because the way it sounds, it would appear that the department can enter into joint ventures, etc.
Mr. President, the basis of this is the EO 48, which gives the HUD-C the power to proclaim government idle lands for socialized housing.
Right. Is that what does raising alternative resources mean? Is that what it means?
Mr. President, if it will be more comfortable for the minority leader, we can strike out the itself so that the programs, the financing programs, will be done by its attached agencies.
By the
By
keys?
not- can remove itself.
Yeah, okay, and give it to the key shelter agencies, which really should be engaged in this resource mobilization. Hindi po ba? Because we have agreed that the department is a policy-setting body, and the shelter agencies will be the implementers. And to me, lines 15 and 18 would involve implementing the housing program because of the alternative resources. Anyway, with that, we can just adjust this during the period of amendments. Okay, the other question on page 7 is, the department is given the power to take over unfinished, incomplete, or abandoned licensed real estate development projects under PD 597 in coordination with the appropriate government agencies and instrumentalities. Is this being done today by the HUDCC or by the NHA?
I think it's an existing HLURB function, no?
HLURB?
Yes, under PD Presidential Decree 957, which gives it the power to take over unfinished, incomplete and abandoned license or real estate development projects. So the basis is Presidential Decree 957.
So if it's taken over by the HLURB, now it will be the department who will take over.
Yes, Minority Leader.
Now, who will complete the development if assuming that it's an abandoned project, real estate development? Who will now complete the development?
Mr. President, distinguished Minority Leader, it will still be the attached agencies who will complete.
If it is the attached agencies, if we can, I have no problems with this. If we
the one
can,
who will implement.
Yeah, the implementer will be the key, one of the KSAs.
We're open, most likely NHA or any of the attached agencies.
Yeah, NHA is, I think, the most appropriate.
Any of the key shelter agencies.
Yeah, okay, we can amend it that. We have already raised our concern about the condominium units disputes being in the jurisdiction of the adjudicatory board, and if we agreed on that, we can just delete any reference to condominium owners. Okay. Here on page 9, the general powers of the department. A little broad. I mean, it says on line 2, the department is given the power to enter into contracts, joint venture agreements or undertaking, PPPs, memorandum of agreement or understanding, either domestic or foreign, under such terms as the department may deem proper and reasonable, subject to existing laws. This is an implementation power, very clearly. You enter into contracts, joint venture agreements, etc., and this is a line department. This kind of powers are usually exercised by corporate entities, GOCCs. So I do not know. The department is not a GOCC. In fact, it's a regulatory department, a policy formulation, the program coordinator. Are they supposed to enter into contracts or joint venture agreements? Maybe you can assign this to one of the key shelter agencies. That's the as an implementer. We don't mind being in the National Housing Authority as being an implementer of the shelter program. But to give it to the department is a little awkward and if they are only policy and program coordination, entering into a joint venture is a little out of sync. Anyway, the department secretary will have general supervision over the key shelter agencies, including the NHA.
Yung rehab, parang disaster rehab, baka pwede. Isa-isingit yan. Okay lang tayo.
Mr. President, that's okay, but with regards to disaster rehabilitation, just say for example the Marawi rehab, we feel that the department has to really step in and take charge.
No, I don't agree. The department can set the policy, can provide policy coordination. The implementation should be with the National Housing Authority. They are the implementer. The department sets the policies and even the parameters of the housing programs there. But the implementation should not be with the department. It should be with the housing agencies.
Well, the justification also, distinguished leader, Mr. President, is that things like this, the Zamboanga siege, Yolanda, and we do not want a repeat of those. And with Marawi siege, we feel that the agency would be in a better position to perform than a GOCC.
No. A key shelter agency under the Department of Housing, which is the national, the NHA, is in a better position to implement.
Well, the reason is that the NHA is still is also a GOCC, Mr. President.
Whether or not it is a GOCC, the fact is, it is an implementing agency. The department is a policy-making, regulatory program coordinator, not an implementer. And they have the right to supervise the key housing agency.
Yeah, Mr. President, the reason, because GOCCs, they are cost recoverable programs, no? They go into projects with the assumption that they will be able to recover the cost, but with calamities and disaster like the Marawi, this one is really, there is no intention, no, to recover the cost anymore. This is really to help the people. The government will invest in on rehabilitation, but with no intention anymore to recover the cost.
No, well, we can, the recovery of the cost is not always a factor, but in these instances, rehabilitation need not be equated to recovery of the cost, and simply because the cost need not be recovered does not justify that the implementation be done by the department. It should be done by the key shelter agency who has expertise on the implementation of the housing program. That's our point, Mr. President.
Likewise, if we may add, the GOCCs, they use the accounts receivable to sustain their operations. So probably that's the main difference.
No, the GOCCs can be funded from the General Appropriations Act as a subsidy. In fact, the national government funds many GOCCs through subsidies, and assuming that the Marawi example is assuming the Marawi rehabilitation is in issue, the General Appropriations Act can provide for subsidies to the National Housing Agency in order to fund the rehabilitation of Marawi through the NHA. Again, being the implementing agency. It doesn't have to be the department. That's our point. And the NHA, being an implementing agency, is better equipped than the department itself, because the department is more of a policy and program coordination. But the implementation is with the shelter agency, which is under the supervision of the secretary. In fact, the secretary is the head of a, there's a board here, sir. How do you call that? Huh? Huh? National Shelter Board.
Question from the chair. Not all departments are planning, policy, regulatory, and program coordination. Some departments actually implement.
Yes.
So is this now a conscious decision on our part that this department that we want to establish, we will limit and not make it, limit its function and not make it an implementing department?
That was our agreement.
Yes,
at the start.
I heard the exchange.
Yes, that was the parameter of the department, because the implementation will be in the key shelter agencies. That's the structure that we started with. The HUDCC, which under the Executive Order number 90 is really a program and policy coordination body, should remain that way. Otherwise, you'll keep on expanding the bureaucracy. And we have agreed at the start of this interpretation that that is the concept that we will continue to follow insofar as the creation of the Department of Housing is concerned.
Yes. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify in my mind that other departments are actually
maybe so. But in this particular case, given the situation, we have agreed with the sponsor that it will that it will be the implementation will be done by the housing agencies. In fact, Mr. President, if you look at page 6 or page 5 of the bill on the functions of the department, clearly they are all policy making, no implementation, from lines 1 to 5. The department shall act as the primary national government entity responsible for management of housing, human settlements, urban development. It shall be the sole planning and policy making, regulatory program coordination, and performance monitoring, etc., etc. So by the very concept of this bill, they have correctly separated the policy function and the implementation function. The policy function being with the department, the secretary, and the secretary will supervise the implementing agencies in the key shelter agencies, the NHA, etc., which is to me is a better arrangement.
Yes, that's from your exchange. I could notice that the minority leader agrees with the overall framework.
Yes, we agree with that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for that clarification. Go ahead, Mr. Sponsor.
Well, we're still, our position, Mr. President, Minority Leader, is that still with the rehab, no? Since it's it will be non-recoverable, so that is why we still maintain that the government.
Even if it's non-recoverable, Mr. President, that does not justify the proposition that it should be the department who should handle the implementation. It should be the National Housing Authority, and if the National Housing Authority cannot recover, so be it, because these are sourced from the general fund, not their corporate funds. That's how it should be done. We have many implementing agencies, like TIESA, for example. All the funds are brought to TIESA. They are the ones who would implement. If they cannot recover, that's precisely the role of government, to be able to spur development and not be really concerned about return on investment.
Well, the difference being, Mr. President, is that NHA also recovers, no? So it will be, we try to delineate that in some projects, in most projects, the NHA tries to recover so that it will also use, they will also use those funds for its operations. But again, as I mentioned, there's in rehab work, we don't expect anything, we don't expect to recover anything anymore. So, but the NHA can also do it, but it's in other projects, they have to recover, but with rehab, they don't have to.
No, they don't have to recover.
They
And
don't have to
it will
recover.
not be taken against them if they cannot recover. Because that's precisely the role of government, to provide housing. Now, the only concern that we are debating here is that a policy-making body, which is the department, will now engage in implementation. It should be the agency, implementing agency under the department, in this case, the National Housing Authority. That's all our point is.
Well, the problem is that some of the beneficiaries, no, or where NHA collects, might say, how come you're not collecting on that particular development or particular project? How come we are paying? You're obligating us to pay.
Because that's what the law is.
With the permission
of the two gentlemen.
colleagues.
Yes,
Senator Recto.
just maybe this could help. What is the role of the NHA, Mr. President?
Well, it's the main production, housing production arm of
government.
Of government.
Okay, it's a production arm. Okay. Who is its constituency? Who does it build houses for?
The lowest 30% of the population.
Okay, now, let's begin.
And
hindi ba ang
including the
unang
farm-
trabaho ng NHA yung informal settler, yung walang pera makabili ng bahay, yun ang dapat bigyan ng bahay?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so basically informal settlers. Okay? Those who can afford at member ng Pag-ibig, they borrow from Pag-ibig. Private sector naman ang gumagawa ng bahay na yun. Tama?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay? And the reason why you're having this debate is we're only institutionalizing and giving a cabinet rank under this bill. The current setup today, you have the HUD-C. Under that kasi are 6 government agencies. One is regulatory body, the HLURB, to regulate the private sector.
Yes.
Okay? 2 is the National Housing Authority, which is the production arm of government.
Yes, it is the agency engaged in direct shelter programs.
Correct. Okay? And then you have which one here is the Pag-ibig?
HD, Home Development Mutual Fund.
Okay. This is a financing arm of government. Para those who are members of Pag-ibig at bibili ka ng bahay, pwede kang umutang sa kanila. But principally, the houses are made by the private sector. Is that correct?
Yes,
So
that's
in
correct.
effect, what we're just doing here is institutionalizing an EO and giving that person now, the head ng HUD-C, a cabinet rank, among a few other things. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. At the appropriate time, I will ask questions on the role of the Home Guarantee Corporation. Kailangan pa ba to? Yung Social Housing Finance Corporation, kailangan pa ba to? Yung National Home Mortgage Finance Corporation, kailangan pa ba to? And I think the reason why we want to create the Department of Housing to begin with is to address the problem of lack of shelter.
Yes.
So at the appropriate time, we will make the interpolation and probably provide some input so that the objective of the bill is not only to institutionalize these EOs, but to create an environment that government can create these housing needs na hindi kaya ng, let's say, ng bottom 20% of the population to afford a house or a home. So with that, I thank the gentlemen for allowing me to.
You know, Mr. President, I deliberately refrain from getting into that because aabutan po tayo ng ilang kongreso before we can straighten out agencies like the Home Guarantee Corporation, which has the power to issue guarantees with sovereign backing. And
Ang daming naging utang natin in the past because of this.
Kaya po hindi ko na ginagalaw yan, dahilan po matatagalan tayo at ang ating, the concept here is to create a Department of Housing, and the implementing agencies will be the key support agents, key housing
KSA, Key Shelter Agencies.
Key shelter agencies. Yan lang po ang concept. That is the only concept that we would want to push so that we can create the Department of Housing. Now, if the gentleman from Batangas will go into all of this, well, that's his own prerogative.
Yes,
but
at the
it's not
appropriate
easy.
time, Mr. President. Thank you.
If we are going just to create the Department of Housing and have the two sectors, policy and program coordination, adjudication on one end, on one side, and implementation on the other end through the key shelter agencies, it's a clean division. But if you want, as the good gentleman from Batangas would want to examine the situation in some of the attached agencies, good luck to him. I will just listen. Because it's really a mess, Mr. President. Pinag-aralan ko na po yan.
Yes. And Mr. President, the reason why I mentioned that is because, and that's why our housing program is in disarray. And since we're talking about creating a new department, might as well fix the problem. And that's the intention of this representation. Thank you very much.
So,
But probably to end this, Mr. Distinguished Minority Leader, we're open to your proposal or any amendment.
But do not be open to the proposal of Senator Recto
No.
to examine all the shelter agencies. Hindi po mabubuo itong departamento mo kung pumasok. Anyway, I'm just, but if we are just going to limit ourselves to the creation of the department and clearly draw the line between the department proper, include the program, policy and program coordination and adjudication on the one side, and then the shelter agencies on the other as the implementers, then we can finish this bill. That's on the record. If we, the gentleman...
And the relationship between the department and the KSA is just supervision?
That's what
That's the word.
No. The department itself, there will be a National Shelter Board, and the department will have supervision and control over these agencies
And
through.
control.
Yes.
Okay, so is that the answer also?
Through the National House, National Shelter Board that is provided in Chapter 5.
Chapter 5, yes.
It says the corporate powers and functions of the attached agency shall be exercised by a single board of trustees known as the National Shelter Board, composed of the secretary itself as ex officio chairman. That's found in page 26 and 27, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
And the heads of the attached agencies are also members of that board. So there is closer coordination. There is closer coordination between the secretary, who is the chair of the National Shelter Board, and the attached agencies, who are in fact, where the heads in fact are members of this National Housing Board.
And if I may add, Mr. President, distinguished minority, the proposed National Shelter Board, our version, the Senate version, will replace the individual boards of the attached agencies.
Yes.
So we will only have one board for all.
Yes.
So it's the streamlining the policy, the decision-making between the key shelter agencies. Before this was the dispute because the other key shelter agencies wanted to retain their respective boards. So we were able to convince them that in the Senate version, we will only have one board.
Yes, that is why drawing the distinction as a policy maker and an implementer, and at the same time coordinate, is written in this bill. That is why I don't want to go into the details of the other housing agencies. So if that is agreed upon, then we can delete lines 2 to 5 at the appropriate time on page 9. So and leave it to the National Shelter Agencies.
the minority leader is proposing the deletion because this is implementation.
That's
Is that
correct, sir.
correct?
That's correct.
Well, for the record, Mr. President, HUD before was a mere coordinating agency. No? That's why we are proposing that there's a need for implementing of policies to implement. So, to implement some projects like governmental functions, like we were proposing specifically for rehab and construction of and reconstruction programs.
Well, precisely that was the reason why we raised that issue of policy making versus implementation, because there will be expansion of the bureaucracy again if we do that. And this is this is already implementation.
Well, we'll just wait for the proposal of the distinguished minority leader.
The proposal is to delete at the appropriate time lines 2 to 5 on page 9.
Well, I hope you'll give us time to study.
Yes,
and,
yes, of
and
course.
then we will
I'm
enjoy
giving
the
you
proposal.
yes. Study it, but that's our proposal at the appropriate time. On the same page, lines 7 to 9, the department is given the power to discharge all responsibilities of government that may arise from treaties, agreements, or other commitments on human settlement and urban development to be extended through bilateral or multilateral loans or assistance programs. Again, this is an implementation, Mr. President. What is this power?
Well, likewise, Mr. President, the distinguished minority leader, it was envisioned that this provision is in line with the rehabilitation.
Yeah, well, yes. Okay, so
And
our previous debate on the ability of the department to implement would be applicable to lines 7 to 9 on page 9 as a power of the department. Again, lines 11 to 14 would fall under the same category. It
Yes,
says
it's the same.
Power to receive, take, and hold by bequest, devices, gift, purchase, or lease, either absolutely or in trust for any purposes from foreign and domestic sources, etc., etc., etc. Why can we not give this to the key shelter agencies rather than the department? Anyway, the key shelter agencies are under the supervision and control of the secretary through the National Shelter Board. There's better coordination. So again, the same reservations on paragraph C, lines 11 to 14 on page 9.
well, distinguished minority leader, Mr. President, those are line agency functions. Huh? That's what envisioned. It's not corporate.
No, I'm sorry? Not? Huh?
Usual.
Not section. These are to receive, take, and hold by bequest, device, gift, etc. You're a corporate entity to be able to do this. You are a juridical person.
Right.
Because that's how the structure should be. And again, we cannot understand why it should be given to the department if the department is only policy and program coordination.
Well, in instances like Marawi or Yolanda, there are some government of the other countries that, for example, will extend aid or assistance. So we feel that it's better implemented by line agencies instead of.
That's precisely at the start of this interpellation. We have agreed that the implementation is better done by the people who have the expertise. The lines are drawn, you have a policy, you have a board of directors in effect, and you have the implementing arm, which are the officers of the corporation, in this particular case, the key shelter agencies.
Well, if it's, it will be more comfortable to the distinguished minority leader, again, we will just await your proposal, and then we'll study it, and
no, but if we have we maintain that if the concept is one group, one side is the key shelter agencies are to implement, and the department is to come up with programs. Lines 2 to 20 or whatever is not consistent with that concept. In fact, on line 19, it says implement prototype projects in housing and development undertakings. We know that what prototype is. The prototype can be, hundreds of, can be as broad as a housing development. Again, consistent with the structure that we have agreed upon at the start. We have basic reservations about lines 19 and 20.
Mr. President, can we ask for a minute suspension, probably, if we can confer with
Before Senator Sibiri wants to say something.
Yes. Thank you. With the permission of the two gentlemen, with the permission of the minority floor leader, and permission of the sponsor, just an off-topic on the BBL, so that I can send my, we can send our commissioners home today. Just to put on record, because I was asked by Senator Honasan if there's interpellators. I believe Senator Manny Pacquiao and hopefully Senator Kiko Pangilinan will be able to interpolate tomorrow.
Can we move, suspend consideration first of the bill on the floor, so that the gentleman from Bukidnon can manifest
no, because I think he will let them go now. So
yeah, with the permission, sir, it will not take longer than 30 seconds.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Instead of having dead air, because we're going to suspend. Yes, just that tomorrow and on Wednesday, Senator Joel Villanueva. Okay. That's all, Mr. President. Yes. I just want to put that on record.
Let us remind them to be ready and to be prepared. So session suspended for a few minutes.
ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, the next aspect or the next phase of our interpellation will revolve around the creation of the Adjudication Commission. And reading through this is, they will create an NLRC-like structure, complete with adjudicators, regional adjudicators, commission composed of 3 divisions with 3 commissioners each. Having a regional adjudication branch provided. At this point, I want to make it of record that this is the next phase of our questions and interpretation. I have intimated to the sponsor what areas I want to cover, and maybe he can again take a second look at the structure that they want to create. And at this point, with the permission of the sponsor and the President, we move to suspend our interpellation again to resume at the appropriate time when the author has reviewed the structure of the so-called commission. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move to recognize Senator Ontiveros.
Senator Ontiveros for interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the good sponsor accommodate just a few questions on just 3 issues, Mr. President?
Willingly, of course, from the gentle lady from Panay.
Thank you, Mr. President. And pagpaumahin na lang ng sponsor, pero parang narinig ko na yung iba sa mga punto, sa mga tanong na ito ay maaring napag-usapan na rin with some of the previous interpellators, especially the most recent, the good minority leader. Pero para lang maiputo on record, kahit maiksi lamang. So una, Mr. President, could the good sponsor clarify the provision on the integration of housing agencies, especially with respect to implications on the existing workforce of these agencies? Would these employees be absorbed by the department, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President, the existing employees would have the option of continue working with the government, while the coterminous employees could stay until the tenure of their bosses will end as well. So the existing employees would be absorbed.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is, however, a pending bill on the rationalization plan for government workers, and this proposal is also being pushed by the Department of Budget and Management. May mga efforts na po ba para i-harmonize itong dalawang proposal na sa unang tingin parang kontrapelo sa isa't isa, Mr. President?
Mr. President, of course, to the distinguished lady from Panay, the creation of the Department of Housing, we will be elevating the functions of the HUD-C. So it will now become a full-fledged department with expanded powers as well on urban development. If I may read that, the creation of the Department of Housing and Urban Development is in line with the current thrust of the administration of right-sizing. The proposed DHUD will ensure that there will be clear delineation in the functions of the attached agencies involved in human settlements and urban development, and will result to effective and efficient delivery of service. Further, it will in effect rationalize mandates and functions of the agencies toward a unified direction, directly accountable to the Secretary of the Department.
So nakikita, Mr. President, ng good sponsor na in fact, hindi kontrapelo itong panukalang batas at saka yung rationalization plan dahil sa sinabi nilang magiging rational din at right-sized yung bagong complement ng bagong departamento.
Yes, that is correct, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sa issue naman, iwan ko na yung usapin ng civil servant security of tenure, sa usapin naman ng limited appropriations for housing. Traditionally, Mr. President, housing and urban development have received less than 0.5% of the annual national budget, which increased to 1.35% or about 23 billion pesos per year from 2011 to 2016 on account of the 50 billion peso Oplan Likas program for informal settler families living in danger areas in Metro Manila. However, according to a study by the World Bank, the Philippines' budget for housing remains one of the lowest among Southeast Asian countries at only 0.12% of gross domestic product from 2000 to 2014. In other countries in our region, spending on housing ranges from 2 to 5% of GDP. So, parang may proportion katulad nung minimum required for health, minimum required for education, pati sa mga international agencies. While increasing resources alone, however, will not solve the problem, pero, good sponsor, posible bang yung transformation ng HUDCC sa isang Department of Housing at yung consequent na merger niya ng struktura niya sa HLURB, would this increase its resource allocation? Would it have that effect, Mr. President?
Can you please repeat again?
While increasing resources alone will not solve the problem, can the transformation of HUDCC HUDC into a Department of Housing and its consequent merger with HLURB increase its resource allocation?
It is also intended, Mr. President, that LGUs will be capacitated, no, to help in implementing programs. So the LGUs will have the resources as well. And likewise, the government lands will be used for housing and urban development purposes. And that's one function that the identification of and designation of lands for housing and urban development will be performed, of course, by the department.
So, Mr. President, ang nakikita po ng good sponsor na not necessarily na yung funds at saka other resources para sa housing and urban development programs ng gobyerno ay dun malalodge sa Department of Housing. Parang ang narinig ko po kanina ay mas sa LGUs papasok yung higit na resource allocation para sa housing sector. Tama po ba, Mr. President?
No, of course, the LGUs, it will lead all government activities, no, relative to housing and urban development. That's the intention. And where we want to build the LGU capacity in their housing urban development functions, and will support them, no, so that they can also implement housing on their own, no, so that they can some of the cities are already capable, especially in Metro Manila NCR, are already capable of doing their own housing programs in city housing. So the Department of Housing sees the local government units as a force multiplier in addressing the backlog that we currently have right now, which stands at 1.2 million, Mr. President, immediate needs. And with the creation of the department, one of the intentions is to speed up and increase the production, so that we are trying to tap the LGUs as a force multiplier, because as of the moment, with the current setup under the HUDC, through the years we have the government agencies has been producing only about 200 to 250,000 maximum. So with the growing population, it does not address the backlog. Hence, if the trend continues, by 2022, our backlog might reach about 5.5 million to 6 million. So about 6.5 million. So we're hoping that with the creation of the department, we will be synchronizing and we will all move in one direction, and therefore, hopefully, we can increase the production. And likewise, as I just mentioned, we are tapping the LGUs who are capable as a force multiplier so that we will be able to address the backlog. Hopefully, the 250,000 production that we have currently are producing right now, if we can increase it to about 500 to 800,000, so much the better. Because at present, if the trend continues that we are only producing 250,000, I think it will take about 25 years for us to address the backlog. So that's one of the intentions of the bill, Mr. President, is to increase the production and quality production of that. Because what has happened in the past is that we have spent billions on housing projects, but unfortunately the occupancy is very low, so we do not want a repeat of that. Hopefully, with the creation of the department, we will have a better coordination and with the key shelter agencies, because they will this time around they will only have one board.
Bilang final follow-up question, Mr. President, dito sa usapin ng limited appropriations for housing, in practical terms, sa unang GAA na ipapasa natin pagkatapos malikha na nga itong Department of Housing, saan po natin makikita yung greater appropriations for the housing programs? So, ibig po bang sabihin, hindi na natin hahanapin yon sa Department of Housing? Kasi maalala ko yung good sponsor, isa sa mga nangunguna na pansinin bakit underfunded yung mga key shelter agencies. Pero sa unang GAA, pagkatapos itayo yung Department of Housing, will we find the greater appropriations for housing, halimbawa sa mga LGUs, sa DILG budget? Saan po natin aaprubahan at pagkatapos nun hahanapin yon pag ino-oversee na natin yung implementation?
Well, hopefully with the creation of the department, the housing needs would gather more attention, no? Because the problem in the past, it's really sad in the last budget that there was a significant cut on the housing end, which the minority leader even stood up, no, and pointed that out. So hopefully with the reforms that are being implemented right now by the HUDC and presently by HUDC and the NHA this time around, we can show better performance, no? Because I think what happened before was that with the controversial AFP, PNP housing and other projects that are unoccupied, that probably one of the reasons why the HUDC and the other key shelter agencies received tremendous cut. So hopefully this time around, I have seen that under HUDC Chair De Rosario and General Manager Escalada, they have already implemented a lot of reforms, no, that we have proposed. Just to give you an example, in the controversial AFP PNP housing, before there was only one model. Now, in that model, 22 to 24 square meters, and then the housing sites, no, were located really in far-flung areas. So this time around, they are now choosing the prime most consideration now is the location, and second, there will, like for AFP, PNP, BNG, MP, BFP housing, there will now already be 3 models to choose from. So we believe that with these reforms that are being instituted at present by HUDC and NHA, they will have better projects, no? And the absorptive capacity will likewise increase, no? So hopefully with the reforms that have been started would improve the projects, and hopefully we would be able to add the subsidy for the housing program next year.
So, naglo-look forward din ako doon, Mr. President, na sa pamumuno ng good sponsor, ma-replenish yung napansin nilang limited appropriations for housing, particularly dun sa key shelter agencies at sa ilalim ng direksyon ng Department of Housing.
If I may add that, I think, admittedly, there was a flaw in the housing program, as evidenced by the very low occupancy rate. So hence there was a need to reform. So hopefully, with those reforms now being implemented, hopefully this time around that we can already add an increase subsidy or budget for housing, as if we can see the revitalized program for housing this time.
Salamat, Mr. President. Huling issue on the provision of basic and essential services. Bagamat narinig ko nga na medyo natalakay nyo rin ni the earlier interpellator, ang minority leader kanina. The law, Mr. President, RA 7279, doesn't require the provision of other essential services like health, education, security, social welfare, and livelihood opportunities. These services are only required to be planned and given priority for implementation by the LGU after the transfer of families. As a result, many projects suffered from inadequate planning of resources needed beyond the construction of housing units. Gaya ng sinabi ng good sponsor kanina, many off-city relocation sites had also been marred by complaints from the families on the lack of access to adequate livelihood opportunities and other basic services necessary to make houses livable. In 18 relocation sites across the NCR, plus Rizal, Cavite, and Bulacan, housing units had been completed and families transferred, but the funding for utilities and other community facilities were belatedly programmed for 2017. And during that year's budget call, the DBM itself noted that at least 15,000 unoccupied houses in 26 resettlement sites completed by NHA could be identified or enumerated. The problems above resulted in, as the good sponsor was saying, low utilization rate, 71% for NHA and 67% for SHAFC from 2013 to 2015, as both agencies struggled to cope with the increased subsidy and demand for their services. This had been viewed by the DBM as indications of NHA and SHAFC reaching their absorptive capacity, gaya ng sinabi din ni good sponsor kanina. The unused subsidy left in NHA and SHAFC and their annual collections from beneficiaries resulted in both agencies precisely having significant cash left, prompting DBM to slash their proposed 2017 budget. So ang huling tanong ko po, Mr. President, can the proposed DHOD, under its proposed mandates, be able to require the provision of other essential services, including health, education, security, social welfare, and livelihood opportunities, instead of just having priority inclusion of these facilities in project and program plans, Mr. President?
Well, actually, that was the reason why at first we wanted the name to be Human Settlements, because it's not only the vision for the creation of the department is not only the construction of the houses, but we have to take into consideration all of those things. As what has been happening, Mr. President, that right now there are some projects that have no water, no utilities, and people are being forced to relocate without these essentials. So what we are proposing right now and what is being implemented right now are reforms already, that no relocation will take place not unless there's water, there's the basic needs are there. And likewise, I think this is included in the in-city housing bill that we are already deliberating, the inclusion of those essentials. And likewise, what we would want to happen is that if private developers can build townships, that's why they are able to sell. The big developers, Ayala and others, township, it's complete. There are health facilities, there are schools, transportation hubs. So that is what we want to happen this time with the reformed housing sector, probably with the creation of Department of Housing. This time around, we hope that the new housing programs or the housing projects that will be undertaken under the new Department of Housing will now be township concepts, meaning that they would be complete with light, water, utilities, complete with health facilities, complete with schools and transportation hubs. No? So hopefully, building projects in the far-flung areas would already be a thing of the past because nobody would really be able to live there. No? Siguro sa simula, may titira pag pinwersa, pero after a while, iiwanan din ho. And that was what is happening. That's what is happening in a lot of the projects in the past. No, that we have been, the government has been spending billions, but the occupancy rate has been very low because of these factors that I mentioned. Hopefully, with this time around, with we'll be able to improve that with the reforms that will be instituted along with the creation of the department.
I share that hope, Mr. President. At in fact, kung maalala ng good sponsor, may congruence yung proposal sa panukalang batas na ito kahit dun sa naging budget debates natin nung nakaraang taon para sa GAA ngayong taong 2018. Naalala ko po, ang good sponsor, ang minority leader, yung ilang pa mga kasama natin dito, ay talagang sinusulong na magkaroon niyang convergence sa budgeting at saka sa mga programang mababudgetan yan, even after the passage of the GAA. At nasubaybayan niya ni Finance Committee Chair, Senator Legarda. And I sense during those moments, good sponsor, na malakas yung suporta ng chamber natin sa ganyang pagtutulungan ng iba't ibang mga ahensya, which are in fact consistently mentioned or referred to dito sa DHUD bill, which should work together with the to-be-formed Department of Housing para magkaroon ng livable communities, or yung sinasabi ng good sponsor na kung townships yung modelo niyan, bilang tugon sa ating housing backlog. So salamat, Mr. President. Maraming salamat din, good sponsor.
Thank you also to the gentlelady from Panay.
Just one or two questions from the chair. I went up to, Mr. Sponsor, I went up to Baguio a few days ago, and just before the junction of this Agoo, Pugo Town, and Baguio, I saw a...
La Union, that's in La Union. I think that's the AFP PNP housing.
On the right side, massive housing project, apparently abandoned. Is that an NHA project?
Most likely, Mr. President.
Do we have an NHA rep there? Can we ask them?
Very project na hindi yan.
Are they
We
familiar?
are not familiar because the NHA representative is not here. But,
NHA is not here.
But, Mr. President, just to give you an idea, I have visited some of the projects in the past, like the controversial AFP and PNP housing. The main problem is the location. Probably before, the NHA and the HUD-C before were only concerned on addressing the backlog, no? The production. They were so concerned on the production side. But they didn't take into consideration whether people would actually live in those projects.
Kasi nga, for example, kunyari 300 abandoned housing units, yun din maliliit. Kung ginawa lang nila 100 na 3 times larger, baka may community na doon.
Exactly, sir. Exactly, Mr. President.
O nga, but how will this bill now improve things? Why all of a sudden decision-making will be all of a sudden better just because there is now this department?
Well, actually, Mr. President, now, without the bill being passed yet, no, reforms have been instituted already by HUD-C and NHA because they realized that, and what is good is that they admit that there really is a need to reform and that there is something wrong with the system in the past, no? Because as evidenced by a lot of housing projects that are whose occupancy are really very, very low. No?
So kaya din pala, kahit walang department, improve lang ang pag-iisip. Ganun ba yun?
Well, I think the problem there, Mr. President, is that key shelter agencies did their own projects, no? Kumbaga, hindi po coordinated, no?
Okay.
HUD-C was there to coordinate the key sheltered agencies, but they have their own respective boards. They have their respective projects. So they were not moving into one direction. So one of the aims or the goals of the creation of the department, so that everybody
Pero-
this time would move into one direction, and the key shelter agency will now have one board.
Pero kung mali na location, mali pa ang size, so what does that tell us of the board which made all of these decisions? Anong klase mga tao yun?
Well, I do not want to criticize the past, no? We just have to move forward and correct the past mistakes, probably, Mr. President. And what is good is that last year, when there was a tremendous cut on the budget of for housing, probably that's a blessing in disguise, because they were instituting reforms. So now that we have shown one example, Mr. President, is that in Davao, the new AFP and PNP housing that was started just late last year is already sold out, because it was sold out right away because the primary factor, Mr. President, is the location. It's in the city. And what is surprising, Mr. President, that NHA has a lot of inventory in good location, but what is puzzling is that they were implementing projects that are in the far-flung area. So one example is in Davao, sold out na po. I think that's about 600 units, no, for AFP, PNP, BFP, BJP housing. So I think one of the major factor is really location. Second is that there will be now 3 models to choose from.
Ang gumising sa atin sa issue na to yung privilege speech nyo eh. Di ba? Complete with pictures, mga abandoned. Walang nakakasuhan. For making, let us say, for consistently making wrong decisions?
Well, as of the moment, Mr. President, only under investigation. Likewise, we will look into that. Now, as after the AFP, PNP, BJP housing, we will look into the rehabilitation works also, because it took them so long. Now, even the Sendong victims until now are not yet completed, Yolanda, and now with Marawi. So hopefully the mistakes in Sendong, Pablo, and Yolanda will not be repeated anymore in the Marawi rehab. But we would like to look into that, because it came to our attention, and the reports, no, that have reached our office, that there are a lot of substandard projects that were done, especially in the rehabilitated area. Problema po kasi dito, we really have to reform, Mr. President, because ang nangyayari doon, because of yung sinabi ni Presidente Duterte, he doesn't believe in the lowest bid. So yun na nga po, that's our policy, lowest bid na nga, papasubcontract pa, papapakyaw pa. So ano na po ang may iwan doon sa final product. So that is the dilemma that we face right now. That's probably explains why the occupancy rate is very low, because people really don't think the socialized housing projects are really inhabitable by human. It's not really human standards, I would say. 22 square meters, 24 square meters, and then the workmanship, no, are some of the projects I was able to see. But we would want to look into the rehabilitation projects, and then probably recommend if charges would need to be filed on the past officials.
Thank you, Mr. Sponsor, for answering my questions. Majority Leader?
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1578 under Committee Report number 162.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1390 under Committee Report number 52.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, this is the Philippine HIV and AIDS Policy Act. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we are still in the period of interpellations. However, we are informed that no other senators have made reservations to interpellate. Therefore, I move to terminate the period of interpellations on Senate Bill number 1390 under Committee Report number 52.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, I move to open the period of amendments on Senate Bill number 1390 under Committee Report number 52.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, considering that this is a substitute bill, I therefore move to open the period of individual amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, to introduce individual amendments, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator Ontiveros, to introduce individual amendments.
The sponsor, Senator Ontiveros, is recognized.
1 minute suspension, please, Mr.
Session
President.
suspended.
Yes. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Forgive me for the momentary missing of the of the beat there. Bate po sa konsultasyon kay Senator Ralph, ako na po mag-introduce nung proposed amendments nila bilang individual amendments dahil sa pag-uusap po namin ay tinanggap ko po lahat ng kanilang tatlong amyenda. So first of all, Mr. President, on page 17, line 4, insert a new paragraph to read as follows. Provided, comma, that the standardized basic information and instruction shall be conducted by DOLE for the private sector at no cost to the employers and employees, period. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Secondly, still on page 17, line 10, after the word assessment, insert a colon and a proviso to read as follows. Provided, comma, that the seminar shall be conducted at no cost to overseas Filipino workers, period. I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Is it it's after the word assignment?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, that's I stand corrected. Not after the word assessment, after the word assignment.
Assignment, okay, we got it.
Yes, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
Third, third and last, Mr. President, on page 30, line 4, replace the words a permanent with the words an ad hoc. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection?
Thank you, Mr. President. No further individual amendments.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, considering that tomorrow the Senate President and the Majority Leader intend to introduce their individual amendments, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1390 under Committee Report number 52.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1532 under Committee Report number 142.
Any objection?
Mr. President, this is the measure on Innovative Startup Act. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we are now in the period of individual amendments, and considering that this is a substitute bill, I therefore move to recognize the sponsor, the Chair of the Committee on Science and Technology, Senator Bam Aquino, to introduce individual amendments.
The sponsor, Senator Aquino, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Majority Floor Leader. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Upon consultation with the startup sector, we are moving to amend the definition of startup on page 2, Mr. President. So these are just three very short amendments. But the idea here, Mr. President, is that we are simplifying the definition of innovative startup in the bill because we are actually allowing the agencies that will be accrediting them to come up with their own subcategorization in the IRR. So in short, Mr. President, we are simplifying the definition to allow for the host agencies who will have their own process of accrediting startups for the program to come up with the different requirements that may be needed, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, to begin on page 2, line 5, after the word involves, insert the phrase an innovative. So move, Mr. President.
Insert, okay. Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
On page 2, line 5, delete the word innovation. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection?
On the same page 2, delete lines 6 to 20. So moved, Mr. President.
Okay, so any objection?
Mr. President, Section 3E shall now read as follows. Innovative startup, a registered business entity in the Philippines operating for no longer than 60 months from the commencement of their business operation whose core business function involves an innovative product, process, or business model.
Can we amend there to its?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, so is there any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's all, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, there being no other senators who made reservations to introduce individual amendments, I move to terminate the period of individual amendments on Senate Bill number 1532 under Committee Report number 142.
Any objection? Approved.
Mr. President, I move to approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1532 under Committee Report number 142.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved.
Mr. President, I move to suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1532 under Committee Report number 142.
Any objection?
Mr. President, on other matters, the following are recommended to constitute the Senate panel to the bicameral conference on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1738 and House Bill number 6221. This is the National ID System. On the part of the majority, Senator Lacson, Chairperson, Senators Onasan, Villanueva, and Gatchalian as members, and on the part of the Minority Leader, Senator Franklin Drilon. I so move, Mr. President.
Okay, so let the Senate panel be so constituted.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, March 20, 2018.
Any objection? There being none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Tuesday, March 20, 2018.